Welcome everyone. It is Monday, March 4th, 2024. Welcome to our County Commissioners 9 o'clock strategic planning meeting. Let the record reflect that we have all 5 commissioners are present. Commissioner French is on Zoom. The others are here in the conference room. And we will go ahead and get started with Jeff McMorris and Heather Arnold. Morning. Good morning, welcome.
So we are here to discuss ARP and kind of where we are, particularly as we measure up against federal timelines and rule changes that have come down, the recent 17th version of those rule changes you're all aware of. We'll pass it out. It was in your packet. We updated the, I'm gonna pass out, it's very similar to what's in your packet. Just Heather and I kind of went along and made comments on each one, and we decided we'd just print out copies with those comments for you guys, so you don't have to take as many notes. We did G-rate some of the comments from our hot mess original. I can say that generally, not to anyone specifically.
Thank you, Jeff,
So we did tone down the comments and kind of make them more politically appropriate. Overall, you will see that the first page are the ones that are completely completed,
I'm gonna just hand it out.
which is great. And then we have several pages of yellows and reds. So we kind of went with a stoplight. The ones that are in green are moving forward. From a staff perspective, at this point, we think they're on track to get where they need to. Those that are in yellow, we have some concerns. Yellow's gonna be the biggest category. We have some people in yellow that are pretty close to green. We have some people in yellow that are on the verge of becoming red. And then we just have a few in red. Some of that, when we did this list and started kind of paring it down, we are required to treat every awardee the same. And so if you guys make a decision, like today, we're gonna ask you that for some of those in red, we wanna send them a pretty stern letter that says if we don't hear from you by date certain, we're gonna exercise severing the contract. And so, but if we're actually gonna send something that stern, it became a much smaller group because these are the people in red. There's a couple variations, but the 3 that we're gonna request, they are people that we have actually not heard from at all since the contract was signed. They've received phone calls, they've received emails. You'll recall that we sent that letter out in mid-January, 6-7 weeks ago now, to every group that had not fully expended their funds. They didn't reply to that. So in the spirit of making sure if we have a standard, we're applying it to everybody that meets that standard, that's that one.
So Jeff, can I just interrupt for a second? So on those 5 in red, whose districts are they? Which commissioner districts? Because I think then maybe it's gonna be up to a commissioner to.
Irvin is gonna be right on the border between you and Commissioner Kearns. I think it's Kearns with the redistricting, I need to double check. Four Lake should be out Commissioner French's way, as with Clear Lake. We've tried to give them some grace, knowing they probably were impacted by the fires. But when we've called several times and emailed and we're not hearing back.
And I know Brenda, Fairfield's mine. I mean,
Fairfield
I
and
know-
Brenda's been reaching out to them. And then number 67, that's a different issue. That's a rule change that we have to deal with possibly.
Okay,
So if we start at the top,
thank you.
you'll see the first page is printed out. We have 12 that are completely done. Give them a hand, yay! So those are our 8+ students. And then you'll see from number 13 to down to 34, some of them are at 0% spent. You'll see in the purple, there's the spent to date and the percentage. But those who are at 0 are ones who've communicated with us, and maybe they're a capital project that's in the works, it's just not gonna start till spring. So they're people that we have heard from and we have total confidence that they're actually gonna get it done in the next required timeline. And then you'll see, a lot of them are, a quarter to a third or more spent, ones at almost 96% spent. So they're people who have either been consistently moving along or getting close. And then as you go to page 2, you'll see the orangish column off to the far right. Those are invoices that have been submitted. They're just not through all the process yet, the vetting to make sure every last penny is allowed to be reimbursed. So you'll see, like number 30, they're at 0% spent, but if everything passes, they're gonna jump to almost 38% in this first billing. And there's some other big ones, 25 is gonna go to, so that's kind of what that is. Getting into the yellow is where we'll probably be spending more of our time.
Can I ask a question? So that
Yes, go ahead.
with the, like the regional health district or the fairgrounds, do we know if, obviously they're spending it down, they're working on it, they're probably gonna, when season starts for more construction this year, they'll keep working on it. Do we know if they have all their contracts in place to complete that amount of dollars worth of work?
We talked to Health District, they do, correct?
Yes, their contracts are in place.
Like, that would be good to know too, is just like, contracts signed.
We actually have at the very bottom,
Oh, okay.
a little, no asterisk, but a statement, the next time we come around, we're gonna include
Perfect.
the obligated.
Okay,
We weren't quite there on this one
Right,
yet
but
to
some
have
of
it
these-
consistent.
it's obligated, they're just spending it.
Correct.
And that's like the ultimate thing we have to be concerned about, right? Is that, did they obligate it by the end of the year?
They have 2 more years to spend as
Okay.
long as it's obligated. But like the fair is just finishing up, talked to Aaron last week, they're on their final punch list, working on the fence around the HVAC. So, and that is gonna come in right at 4.5 million. The Parks building is under work, the courtroom I'm hearing is getting closer. So pretty much one of the distinctions between yellow and green is green, you've communicated with us. So we have faith that you are where you say you are. And the numbers are gonna add up, because we have people saying, we're gonna get there. But we've all been taught, the past is a great prediction of the future. And if you've been spending 20,000 a month, but to use all your money, you need to be spending 50,000 a month. And you've been consistently at 20,000 a month, month in, month out, and you've not communicated to us what's gonna change in the future to get you to that higher level, you're still in yellow, because we don't have confidence in your current plans. So going through, like starting at number 35, unless there's questions in the green. So we just don't know their plan. They've sent in a couple bills, they're moving, but they've not communicated with us to know anything more. Number 36, campfires on their 3rd executive team since this award went out. So that brings its own challenges. Heather's had how many meetings with them?
Too many to count.
So they're trying, but with each team, we have to go back and remind them how ARP works. No, you didn't get the big publishers clearinghouse check. You have to spend it yourself, get reimbursed. And no, you applied for this, you can't change it to that because you weren't scored on that. And so new teams have new ideas. Some of them are actually some great ideas, but it's not what they applied for. And so that's a bit of a challenging one there. Operation Healthy Family, they're another one. They applied for capital, wanting to build, they do dental work, free, reduced, they're helping people who need dental work. And they scored very high because they were gonna be providing new people, additional services to new people who needed it. Then they decided they didn't wanna expand their practice, which is actually building a couple of those little rooms with the chair you lay back in, just some more stations. They wanted to go completely operational, but we had to tell them you can't use this money for your historic operations. You only can use it to what's gonna be new and expanded, so I think they're on board.
Yep.
Met with them for the second in-person meeting, who knows how many phone meetings, 10 days ago. And they promised us that week they would be back to us with, they're gonna meet with their board and they were gonna let us know for sure whether they were going to go forward with the capital expansion or reduce the award to the part that makes sense. We've not heard back from them since, so they're still yellow. Feast, we just don't have any recent info. They've spent some, they're moving. There's two family promises. There's this one and then number 57. They've been saying the RFP will be out soon, but we've been hearing that for 12 months. So I don't know the definition of soon. So that's why they're still there.
So for the yellow,
Go ahead.
everybody's received a letter
Everybody's reading the
and
letter
and a call at
phone
least,
call.
maybe multiple calls.
Yes.
Alright, thank you.
I won't mention the one, but the one has received 12 phone calls. They'd fall in that hot mess category. So Ronald McDonald House, their application was for a new HVAC. You know, and generally we did not do small awards because of all the paperwork. We made an exception. You know, we all know the work they do and how needed it is, and it was a defined. I don't know how they've only spent roughly a third of it and then it stalled, but it's one we've not heard back from again. I assume that they will get there. Frame Your Future is working hard. There's a few that fall in this category, as I tell my kids, when they have too much food on their plate, their eyes are bigger than their stomach. What they're doing is great. I don't know if they're gonna get all the way to the end.
Commissioner Kurtz.
Jeff, can I ask, so, I mean, and I don't know if this is the actual story around the Ronald McDonald House, but just say in theory, okay, it was a 37.5 was the total cost of a project. Say they spent 8,900 in sort of planning or maybe buying some materials. But if they don't complete that project, do we get penalized in any way of essentially funding half a project that doesn't actually come to completion? Like,
That's a depends answer.
okay.
If you are starting a program, the program has to be implemented, not completed. Finally, we've talked about with Newman Lake. They did a study. They don't have to have it completed, but they at least have to start implementing what they did. The same thing with, like, that's our challenge, Operation Healthy Family. If they build those new things and they've at least started serving a few people, we're good.
But like
This
an
one being a
HVAC
capital
system.
project, I don't know that we would have to repay that 8,900 if they had something,
To show what they did.
because capital's more different than what I'd call operational and programming. The operational and programming, you have to start implementation.
Okay, thank you.
You wanna talk business Spokane?
Visit Spokane is struggling. Their original award gave them part of their money for Expo 74, part of their money was for the Sports County USA website. Their plan was to, I guess, subcontract the Sports County USA website to a separate entity. My last call with them was that the executive director didn't seem overly concerned about the website piece. When I explained that that was all in her contract and it was her responsibility, I think she understood. But I would have expected that, being that Expo 74 is less than 5 months away, we would have seen the majority of those expenses, and the fact that we have not, the only expenses we have seen is for the program manager, which was capped at 50,000.
So I guess I would just say, so Commissioner Kern, since you sit on that board, if you can make some phone calls, that would be awesome.
I can make additional phone calls.
He's been helpful already, bringing some new things there. They've also wanted to purchase a lot of swag for handout for sports students, and we can't do swag, that's gifting of public funds.
And I think part of this is, it was under previous leadership that they received this grant.
Another executive
you
board
have-
change.
Yeah.
You have a new director, you have substantial new folks on the board, substantial, but this, I mean, this is not a project that's even discussed at the Visit Spokane board meetings. I think this is all being done more by Visit Spokane staff we're not,
Right.
I mean, this isn't sort of Visit Spokane board directed, so.
Okay. No, which is interesting because I think, during our CARES dollars, we had the same issue with public facilities districts. So I mean, they all kind of knew they couldn't use it to buy swag at that
Yes.
time. So interesting. Okay. Well, and I'll just say, on 45, Chris and I sit on the Launch Northwest board, and we've been meeting this week, and I think that's one of the topics is on that. And then Jeff and I met with Ben Small, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. Recently, so to really inform him as to what needed to happen there. So
45, I'd put it in the same bucket as 41. They're doing stuff, they are.
But maybe they
Maybe they overshot.
overestimated what could be done in the amount of time and how much that would cost.
And so
and I
that
think partly too, we're dealing with Treasury as they've come back
rule
with
changes.
rule changes. It's the goalpost
true.
keeps moving.
Yeah.
So we're trying to, and
Very true.
and as Jeff knows, when I was back in DC, I sat in a meeting as part of the board for NACO. The lady who heads up this for Treasury came and spoke and gave different guidance than Jeff thinks is valid. So I mean, it's just crazy, and I'm sure the Small Business Administration sees it too all the time, where things just keep changing right now, and it's really hard to help provide guidance, and I understand the frustration on the nonprofits that we've given these funds to, but we've got to figure out how to follow it and do it right, because we don't want to have to pay back funds that we don't have any longer and all of that. So
Guidance is challenging, because we could split this table into 3 teams with 3 different points on the guidance, and we could all come and show the lines that says we're all right.
yeah,
Be like arguing theology. It's just, there's a line there for each of us. And so it's very challenging when they keep changing the rules, they're not always consistent. Their verbal doesn't always match their written. As Dale Anderson, bless his heart, I think we broke him last week with Comcast, but he's been really good. He goes, go back to the CFRs. He goes, if we're actually challenged on something, we want the actual in writing piece. So he's been really good at keeping us, and we still have, 9 solid months, so.
so I wonder, would it be beneficial for me to reach out to the lady, the Director of Treasury, to see if we can get a phone call?
We certainly can. We've had them on a lot of NACO calls and GFOA calls. Heather's very good at attending them. I'm probably a 50%er. And so,
She's the director, so.
but the thing is, we need them in writing is what we
Okay.
need. The in writing email would probably actually be best, something we could point to.
Okay,
I'm happy to chat with her.
I think I'll try to see if I can set something up then.
That'd be good.
Okay.
Back up to 43, it's not in the red because they've actually spent some, but we've not heard from them, and they were part of the group that we called right around the first of the year. We did another round of calling everybody, just never, I think a lady answered the phone and sent us to the right person, but that right person never returned. The Y is one that they've told us now they probably won't get through it all. Another one where the eyes were bigger than the stomach. They were going to do several $100,000 was for storage units, particularly around those fleeing a domestic violence situation, a place to short-term store, scored very well. They are having trouble getting permits from the city, and so they can't get it under obligation. We've talked with them, like, do they have could they do, storage lockers indoors somewhere? Does it have to be ground up? So they're looking at options, if some of you have friends at the city to push. I'm just telling you what they told me, I don't have anything more to add there, Heather.
No, that's what they said.
So they asked if they can move that money to updating their fire sprinkler system in the building. And that's one of those, it's a great project, may have scored well, but the problem is it wasn't in their project, and particularly in our nonprofit category, that was our largest category. So when we said no to probably 50-some applicants, unless the board directs us to reopen that whole category and rescore everybody, which will either send us to the funny farm or we'll quit.
Is that a third?
We could honestly do it, we would not be happy, but we could do it with a smile.
Jeff, you're an expert at it now. You
Yeah, I
feel
know.
like goodness. You don't have to-
We'd also have to get the exact same scoring group together, which we probably could do. But they've let us know, we also provided them some of our ERA, the emergency rental assistance money, which when that was opened up to more flexibility, they requested a bunch of funding for rental, mortgage, whatever the situation was, primarily around domestic violence situations. They've not got through the money, the ERA money, plus they have 800,000 of ARP for that same category that they've not touched yet, because they're still working on the ERA. So that's a great group, they do good work. They've acknowledged they probably won't get through it all, but I think y'all probably wanna give everybody a bit more time at this point, we just kinda wanna get things on your radar. Rockford is moving slow, we're assuming that was kind of their pre-work engineering and they're gonna get it done this season. That's another one Brenda's been helpful, trying to get more information. The small towns are an added challenge, a lot of them share staff, and that staff person is there like Monday afternoon on the first and third Monday. So it's just, I'm from small town America, I love rural America, but it can be a bit more challenging to get that communication happening. Workforce got off to a bit of a rough start, but I think we're going good now. They're another one though, unless their spending moves up, I think they'll get to at least 80-90% of their money. Not convinced they'll get all the way there yet. The other childcare vouchers, and just by way of reminder, during CARES money, pre-ARP, it was through CME, they'd requested $10 million for childcare. And it was a huge issue at that point in time. The board gave 3.2, 3.3. They actually, feds changed the rules, they had an extra year to spend down, and they still returned 400,000, give or take.
Something like that.
So, you know, I think that a lot of this money, the vast majority will get spent, they might get to 100%, but it's one I think y'all wanna keep an eye on.
Go ahead, Chris.
Do you think they'll get close at the current pace?
At the current pace, I think they're on track for 75-80%.
Yeah, the current pace, I would say they're probably gonna be projected to be spent by about 500,000.
Thanks.
So, and you know, and some of these programs will possibly snowball and get bigger, but we do have 12 to 18 months of history at this point to look at. Layton I'm feeling good about, we talked with their engineering firm a fair amount. I'm pretty sure it's gonna happen this construction season, but because they didn't respond to us, they're in yellow. Chaz, this is probably one, they requested a medical mobile van,
Staffing for the medical mobile.
which is coming in about 5,000 a month, so it's nowhere near gonna get to the 505. They've now requested a mobile dental van. The words dental van were in their application, but there was no project around it. So it's one we possibly could, under the current, if you guys wanted us to expand out.
I thought their ask though was for the medical van, not for staffing though, wasn't the original proposal for the actual van itself
Some
or?
of each. But they verbally talk some of each.
Okay.
Maybe someone Heather keeps reminding me in writing it was staffing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
their
didn't- I
actual
didn't
scope
think
of
it
work was for staffing the mobile
was.
medical.
Okay, I thought it was to actually buy the.
But their language
The
actually
actual
said they were gonna do
vehicle.
mobile medical and mobile dental.
Okay, I thought it was for the vehicle itself, not just the operation.
We had
of it.
several groups that their, when they would reach out to talk to the commissioners or staff, Their verbal and then their written was variations on the theme. And it's one where we have to go with the written. And so that's one we're seeing if we can accommodate. And it's probably one we can get at least partway there to help. That's a Dale question.
Okay, but their ask as regarding dental would be the actual vehicle now.
Correct.
Correct, okay.
Orchard irrigation, like the other one above, they've started spending, so that's why they're not red, but we haven't heard from them. We're hoping to hear, you'll see, 50, 51, 52, and 53. All of them, we're hoping that they will let us know more. It took a long time to hear back from Airway Heights. We finally did hear back. I actually thought that was a typo and there should have been 69,000, not 690. But I double checked and confirmed that was their first reimbursement, one and only. Spokane Valley Fire, we heard 12 months ago they had their vehicles.
Commissioner French has. Commissioner French, you have your hand up. I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I've got a meeting Wednesday morning with Albert Tripp, so I'll find out about the Airway Heights sewer expansion project. And the last time I talked to the fire chief for Fire District 10, he was hoping that they would be in construction this summer, but I will confirm that with him. Medical Lake, my suspicion is that got delayed because of the fire, but I'll confirm with Mayor Cooper in terms of the status of that and whether they're going to be in construction this summer or not.
We have confirmed the Mayor Cooper one. She picked up the phone when we called a month or so ago.
Good.
And
Okay.
let us know. So Medical Lake, we do have a recent confirmation. It was just
All right.
such a low spending, we kept it in this. But Fire District 10 and Airway Heights would be much appreciated.
All right, we'll follow up on it. Thank you.
So Spokane Valley Fire, these were trucks that would be outfitted with first responder equipment stuff. 12 months ago, we heard the trucks were in Seattle just waiting for the equipment stuff that was on back order. That was our last update.
I'll follow up.
Perfect. Volunteers of America. So this one, the board committed $2 million to Crosswalk. We knew we were getting ARP at the time. We didn't have the first version of final rules yet. So we had committed $2 million from some source. It was on the record it would be ARP if the rules came out allowing that. The rules came out allowing it, they applied, they were awarded $2 million of ARP. Then we ended up with home ARP through HUD. That category required a 20-year monitoring plan, which we thought would be a good fit for Volunteers of America because they have a long track record. We thought they had a good chance of having a long future record. They also had, at that point, a $750,000 to $1 million inflationary hole to fill. And our HUD ARP, home ARP through HUD, was 2.8 and change. So at that point, the board, we did a switch. We took them out of regular ARP, gave them all of the home ARP, and filled their gap at the time. Fast forward several months, the home ARP rules came out because Crosswalk is dorm story without individual ensuite bathrooms. It didn't meet HUD. We asked for a variance. HUD said no. The way VOA works, particularly with suicidal tendencies and such, for their model, they need bathrooms to be a bit more common bathroom, because a private bathroom is a place for things like that to take place. So just, nobody's right or wrong here. I think everybody's doing what they need to do, but they didn't mesh. So we did another switch in our housing world. You'll recall George was involved with that. So now we're back to 1.5 million of VOA. The other 1.3 comes out of some of the recording fee dollars. So they are still whole from the county at 2.8 and change, although 1.5 is coming from here. We just learned last week that they had been finishing up their CARES dollars and other one-time COVID relief dollars for their operational side. And those dollars are coming to an end. And per George in housing, there's no operation money for Crosswalk 2.0 at this point. Fawn is very good at finding money. She's very good at doing what she does. Per Commissioner Kearns's question a little bit ago, this would be one of those, if we put 1.5 million in and it's not operational and running with people and services there by December 31st, 2026, the county would have to reimburse the treasury for that money. And that $800,000 hole that we filled has an additional $2 million inflationary hole at this point. So VOA is looking for 2 million. I know she's going to apply for an earmark. I think you guys all received a request for a letter of support. I've talked with her on that and let her know our timelines for those decisions, so she's good with that. But that 2 million is to fill the gap. And so the way these timelines work, as you are all painfully well aware, we don't even know if our earmark for this year's budget is gonna pass. Who knows if even if that earmark happens, there's fairly good odds that we won't know until 2025, which is past your time frame as a board to make changing decisions. So this is one, I think my recommendation would be to invite Fawn here and just have a conversation, unless some of you wanna have one-offs. We have her scheduled coming in soon to talk on the Homeward Bound.
Right.
We could maybe add 5-10 minutes to that schedule and add this if that's something you're interested in.
I think that would be a good idea to do that, just to see where, just so we can get a feel for where she's at right now and what she sees her future to be for there, because
Everybody's very invested in this project. We
Yes,
just need to
yeah.
make sure
how it
timelines are all working with funding sources.
and we're getting to time, so I'm just gonna let you know that we just gonna keep moving.
Moving along, Hubs one, they promised us is gonna happen this year. We heard that last year.
Okay, I will be there Saturday night for fundraisers, so
Just
I
double
will ask.
check. I heard it from Phil. I called Phil 6 weeks ago. He said the RFPs are almost out. Ahana's one we've worked with extensively. They promised us we'll get our first invoices in January. We haven't received them yet. We've 5 in-person meetings, give or take, lots of phone calls. Love the group. They're fun to work with. They have great ideas. We come together, it's gonna work, and then they leave and they get some more great ideas that may or may not work. So it's one we're really trying to focus it on where we're going forward. They have leased a building.
And
So-
they contract with somebody to help them, guide
Yes.
them, so I think that's gonna be helpful for them with having that contractor on board
To help
To kind
move
of-
this along.
for the cats.
So we're, as we'd like to say in this world, cautiously optimistic. But we're still at 0 is what makes me nervous.
Can you remind me on that, is most of the money, I'm assuming some of the funds were to build their capacity, like operationally, some
They're
staff?
70-30. So
Okay.
they were gonna do 300,000 in small grants
Okay,
to
To small-
multiculturally
small
owned
businesses,
businesses. And then a lot of it is building their own capacity and then hiring people on staff.
Sure.
Who can also help these small businesses.
ongoing, yeah.
Yeah, so kind of that ongoing legal assistance, accounting assistance. Spokane County, NEPA, S3R3. I think they're all moving along. We might have a request for there's 3 Spokane County projects that they probably have a request to remove some from one and add to another. So we're working on those, just waiting for the final. That would require a board, confirming, so it would come before you. NEPA's working with the city to get there, it's not NEPDA, sorry, NEPA's a federal agency.
And then Commissioner French, I see you just raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So the other project that I want to put on your radar is the Valview water system up in 5 Mile. We had made a capital request to get some funding to replace their water system. 36 homes, water system is failing. Legislature did not fund it. And so if there's any surplus funds available, any nickels or dimes, they could use it. It's about a $1.5 million project. City of Spokane will take over the water system once we built, and they'll service it and supply water. But it's replacing the pipe that's old and deteriorated and falling apart. If we don't get some funding for them, they'll basically lose their residents because they won't have any water supply to their homes. So just put it on your radar. Thank you.
Regretfully, they came to all of our attention 3 to 6 months after these categories were opened. So they didn't apply, but that would be one we could reopen a category, groups like that could apply. Comcast, I'm fairly sure they're going to spend their funding. They have more lawyers in the county, and I think we've met all of them. It actually drove Dale to cussing recently, our mild-mannered lawyer. They're doing their best to get out of paying prevailing wages. And I'm like, you're all lawyers, it's not gonna happen. If there's one federal cent in there, it's commingled, you're paying it. I'm not a lawyer, but trust me, I know this is true. So I think at some point, they're gonna do their project and take their money. And that'll be good as a project up Chattaroy area, will add some additional broadband capacity up there. They're putting 10, 12 million in. We're a very small portion of the project. That just is what it is. So into the red, we would like to send letters to the top 4, 63 through 66. That just says, we sent you this letter in January, we didn't hear back. We've not heard from you since your contract was signed. We have called each of you and not had a return phone call. So if we don't hear back from you from date certain, we're gonna exercise our 30-day clause and take the money back. That is our request, but it is your decision. So what do you guys think about those 4? Because the one thing that they all have in common, of the spirit of fairness, as we said early, we've not heard from them since contract signing. They're all at 0 spent. None of them replied to our January letter. Town of Fairfield might be a slight variation.
They responded to Brenda and said,
We'll get back to you.
we'll get.
So they have communicated, but not information.
So I guess from my perspective, I would say I would like to give the commissioners this week to reach out to those groups, as we identified earlier. And then the letter would go out on Monday of next week.
Okay,
That
perfect.
gives us the opportunity
To reach out?
to reach out, to see what's going on, what's happening. And-
Okay. We can just touch into miscellaneous next week as far as which ones we've heard back from, and which still need a letter.
Right, because I think that would, at least for me, I would prefer that, so they're not just getting a letter.
I think they'd be more likely to return a commissioner phone call than ours, so
So,
I like that.
okay. Thank you, and I don't think delaying it a week, the letter.
We're trying to be on the front end here to give you
Yes.
guys time.
Commissioner French?
Yeah, Four Lakes and Clear Lake are responding to the Great Fire. My guess is they're just overwhelmed with all the activity, but I will put in a call to them and find out what we can expect. Thank you.
We had the same conversation there. I almost felt bad calling them. I'm like, but we still need to.
Yeah, no.
And then 67 is the last one. So although the new rules gave us 12 categories under natural disaster response, one of them clearly is for debris removal. The rules also clearly say these are the 3 to 4 areas you can use ARP money as match. And if it's not one of these 3 to 4 areas, you cannot use it. This is not one of the 3 to 4 areas. So we can certainly spend the money on debris removal, but it can't be the match. So we have a letter into the state military department asking if they would change their wording on our contract from saying a 25% match to we will reimburse you 75% of every dollar you spend, making it no longer a match by the legal definition. We put that request in, 2 weeks ago, give or take?
Yeah.
We've not heard back. So if we can't solve for that 258,000 and change, you can leave in this category, but it wouldn't serve as match, or you could reappropriate it. So that's, and just, you probably saw in the paper, the city of Spokane just moved 5 million of ARP from courtroom remodels to cop cars. The city of the Valley has moved some money. So this conversation is happening around our region, around the country. This is a very common conversation happening right now. We're certainly not unique in this. We just wanted to bring it forward. Kind of, you guys are gonna make some phone calls now, we'll do some more pushing and hopefully bring it back in a few weeks with more green, less yellow.
Commissioner Waldron.
Oh, I would be happy to just check in with family. I mean, I know you've already done check-ins, but maybe I could do another friendly outreach to Family Promise and Ahana, just like, I know they're moving, but it's important that they understand that this is real and they need to have really strong plans, or else, you know, it just seems like on a lot of these, we're just gonna have to reduce the amount of the contract. And there's still, you know, there's still funding for them to be able to do great things in our community. It just may be that,
Yeah, 300,000 instead of 400,000.
yeah, cause I just, having worked in nonprofits, and I understand that you have the best laid plans, but unfortunately the last 2 years, you know, employment challenges, right, workforce, wage increases, inflation, a lot
Lines for
has
capital.
impacted what people thought they could do and the time frame by which they could do it, so. Anyway, I'd be happy to reach out to those 2
Perfect.
nonprofits, cause I've recently chatted with them.
That's where we are. Unless you request us sooner, we plan to come back probably early May, because that'll be right at the end of the first quarter report, which will be submitted in April, to kind of show where we are at that point, and then gauge where you guys are as far as making decisions or giving more time.
So, and I think as follow-up happens, you need to please let Jeff and Heather know so that they're aware and can document that of the follow-up that's occurred and where we're at. Thank you very much. I know this has been a big effort on your part, and especially as we said, as Treasury keeps changing the goalposts and us trying to figure it out. So I just have to say thank you for all the hard work that you're doing. We really appreciate it, and we'll be staying in touch. Oh, Commissioner Jordan?
Do you think May is too far out, or should we chat in April about options and kind of looking at the status?
That's your choice. We feel July is our drop dead if you're gonna be making changes. Because if you look at us putting out an RFP and whoever's awarding an RFP doing their RFP, and we firmly believe we need that timeline to end pre-Thanksgiving, because trying to get lawyers to read RF contracts and go back and forth, so many people are on vacation during the holidays. So we kind of feel before the July recess or the August recess, at least be heading a direction with some of the low-hanging fruit if we have any. Right after recess, I think would be the absolute. And then there's also, if you keep the money in-house on things that can be sole sourced, that would be a less timeline. It could buy you more time, but that would not buy you any time to put it into the community. At that point, you would be choosing, and there's a lot of great things we can do in-house too. But that's kind of where the timeline is, and if we get more info mid-April, we actually have a good update, we'll be sure to let you know if you want to hear it.
Just my perspective, I just worry about, given the length of the list, time just getting away, notice to change contracts, options for different decisions is gonna be really complicated, time consuming, and I don't personally wanna let a month go by without knowing what the status is, given that there's a risk of money not being able to be used. That's my opinion, so.
No, I mean, I think if we wanna just come back in April, first part of April,
Yeah.
and we just
We
do
can
it
do
as a monthly update at this point. And I think, yeah, there's opportunities for any of the funds that do come back that can be used internally.
Yeah.
So those funds will not be going back to the federal government. So we definitely know that's not an option that we need to worry about, but, yeah, so. Okay, thank you. Okay, so everyone was given a new updated agenda sheet for today that,
Right on time.
you are right on time, you are, I love it. So yes, the time was extended to 9:45, my previous sheet said 9:30, so I
We did a quick
appreciate it.
briefing for Scott Friday afternoon, he's like, I think you need.
Yeah,
So, okay, so then,
thank you.
yes, thank you, that's gonna take us then to our next item, which is this small business administration office. So George, thank you, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself and your guest and state your name and kind of your title so we can all get to know you.
Absolutely.
And please take seats at the end of the table.
Please allow me to introduce the director of the Spokane SBA office, Joel Nania. And he's been a phenomenal resource. So the way SBA is set up is that we have the traditional SBA, which Joel works for, which helps small businesses. We are part of the disaster recovery piece of it, a smaller subsection, and we're here. And we've been a tremendous partner, so.
Thank you, George.
At any rate,
Meet my new friend, George.
Yes, and Mr.
I have a little tent here,
Oh, I
although
love
my
it.
last name is spelled wrong on that, but that's okay.
You guys came into town once the federal declaration happened,
We were
correct?
here, George was here the day after the federal declaration
Okay,
finally came through.
So,
thank you.
yeah, Madam Chair, Board, I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to present today. I apologize that FEMA's not here, they had a conflict, but they are going to circle back. They do want to speak to this body and speak to others in the community. So my name is George Kosturko. I am with the U.S. Small Business Administration Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience. And I'm here to provide an overview of the disaster loan resources that SBA offers to assist people impacted by the August 2023 wildfire. We can go to the next slide. The SBA Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience is here following the President's major disaster declaration of February 20th for human loss, physical damage, and economic injury as a result of the wildfires that occurred August 18th to the 25th, 2023 in Spokane County and outlying areas. So the presidential declaration covers Spokane County as a primary or designated county. And we also have something called contiguous counties. Those include Lincoln, Pendorial, Stevens, Whitman counties in Washington State, and Kootenai, Benoit, and Bonner counties in neighboring Idaho. So,
We're working on the county. Andre.
yeah.
Don't worry.
So what that means is when I say a primary designated county is that our federal program provides low-interest federal disaster loans to assist businesses and residences that may be underinsured or not insured as a result of the wildfires. So that's very important. Most people, when they think of the Small Business Administration, they think of businesses, but we do offer loans for renters as well as homeowners. We can go to the next slide. So SBA offers low-interest loans to businesses of all sizes, nonprofits, homeowners, and renters not covered by insurance or other recovery funds. Because this is a presidential declaration, we are partners with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which also provides benefits for survivors. So we really want to stress to folks that have any kind of injury related to living in Elk or in Medical Lake to first contact the Federal Emergency Management Agency. It's really critical that you start that process with the FEMA application. The fastest way to apply is through www.disasterassistance.gov. And you can also apply by calling 1-800-621-3362. So FEMA representatives and SBA customer service staff are now in the community to offer in-person services and provide grants and other resources to those in need at 2 locations in Spokane County. We collaborate with FEMA to ensure that survivors have immediate access to grants and loans made available during disaster declarations at centralized locations. So we can go to the next slide. Go back a slide, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so SBA disaster loans are available to homeowners for up to $500,000 to replace or repair their primary residence. Renters and homeowners up to $100,000 to repair or replace personal property. And businesses and nonprofit organizations can borrow up to $2 million to cover disaster losses not fully covered by insurance. Businesses can also are eligible for up to $2 million to help meet financial obligations or operating expenses that could have been met had the disaster not occurred. Those are called EIDL loans, and I'll go into that a little bit later. Now we can go to the next slide. Sorry for setting that early. So the SBA offers low fixed interest rates with terms up to 30 years to help in recovery. There's no cost to apply and no obligation to accept the loan if approved. So somewhat like when you get pre-approved for a mortgage. The August wildfire disaster loan rates are as low as 2.5% for homeowners, 4% for businesses, 2.375% for nonprofit organizations. So eligibility with the SBA is based on a case-by-case review for each applicant. There's no interest for the first year and no repayment requirements for the first 12 months. SBA disaster loans have no closing costs and no prepayment penalties. The deadline to apply for the August 2023 wildfire disaster is April 20th, 2024, which is also the same deadline for the FEMA benefits. I did mention economic injury disaster loans. I'll go over that very briefly. Essentially, what that does is that helps businesses that are, if they've had a loss of business because of a disaster, it can cover things like payroll, inventory, those kinds of things. So it is a valuable benefit. In this case, it may not be as, the folks that are coming into the centers may not be as interested in the EIDL. We're going to be talking to the contiguous counties about that because we believe that there's been some impacts with some of the counties. We can go to the next slide. The one thing I do want to mention about the EIDL loans, they tend to lag about 8 to 9 months, so that deadline is November 20th for those. So last week, US SBA and the Federal Emergency Management Agency announced 2 in-person disaster outreach centers that are available for survivors of the Gray and Oregon Road fires in both El Chattaroy and Medicine Lake. The locations and hours are on this slide right here. So we have one at in a church in El Chattaroy. It's a phenomenal location. I've been there already a couple times. It's very easy to get in and out. We've got very easy for folks to come in to meet with the FEMA folks. They immediately will send you to Small Business Administration to see if you're eligible for a loan. If you're not eligible for a loan, you come back and they look at some other resources. So that's where we work collaboratively together. The second location is in Medical Lake. That is actually in Medical Lake City Hall. That is upstairs. We also encourage people to visit that location. We have everybody in one room. We also have state and I believe local benefits there as well for folks to talk to. And we can go to the next slide. In addition, SBA and the Washington Small Business Development Center opened an SBA Business Recovery Center in Spokane on February 27th to provide a wide range of services. Now, while this is focused towards businesses, if a member of the public has needs, we can help there also. This was simply to really provide a central location for not only businesses in the primary county, but also in the contiguous counties in this area if there's any needs to inquire about some of the loans. So we can go to the next slide. So in the meantime, people impacted by the August 2023 wildfire disaster should do one of 4 things relative to SBA. You can visit SBA's disaster site at sba.gov, /disaster. You can email SBA at disastercustomerservice@sba.gov, or you can call the SBA customer service number at 1-800-659-2955, or you can visit the in-person locations that opened last week. And we can go to the next slide. SBA low interest loan disaster loans are the primary source of federal assistance to help private property owners pay for disaster losses not covered by insurance. And we can be part of the solution to help those in their path towards recovery. And then we can go to the final slide, which we have additional information for folks. I'm ready to answer any questions. Joel can answer questions, I can, and we really appreciate the time today to present before the board.
Yeah, I would add too that part of the coverage for businesses in contiguous counties is if they had customers, say a convenience store had a food service supplier, they went out of business or had a downturn in business so that impacted a supplier that is located in downtown Spokane, then they would be eligible for coverage, that kind of economic impact. So the business didn't have to burn to the ground to get assistance.
And if I can add to that, we had an EIDL declaration for the salmon run, the salmon last year, and as a result, there was not a salmon season. We had numerous businesses, whether it was an owner of a boat, could be transport, could be folks running transport business, could actually be a retail area where they weren't able to offer that salmon. So it's kind of intriguing how an EIDL loan can actually touch many parts of a business that you wouldn't normally think about, but there are many parts in terms of the conveyance, in terms of how things are delivered, and in inventory and those things, and that's where we can help out.
Commissioner Walton.
Thank you for coming. Really appreciate the information, how quickly you've set everything up. So exciting to have this opportunity for folks here. Question, I was just curious, we have a lot of folks these days who work from home. Maybe they have their own small business and they're a sole proprietor and they work out of their home. Is there a nuance to that of whether they can, get different services or loans?
As long as their business out of their home has an EIN, is an official business, they're not just doing a side gig, then there should be assistance if their business was impacted by the fires.
Like if the home was damaged and they weren't able to work out of the home. Anyway, just wondering.
Yeah, so if in that kind of a situation, it's absolutely mission critical that a homeowner / business owner come into one of the disaster resource centers. Every situation is different. I know we get a lot of questions like how long does it take and those kinds of things. We have something called the Unified Lending Platform, which is a new approach. In the old days, we had to have everybody have their whole fiscal situation with them coming in. In this case, we start the process, and then as we move through, as a lender representatives look at stuff, they start asking for information to be either scanned or dropped into a Dropbox so they can begin looking at stuff. Because we don't want people to be feeling like, oh gee, I can't come in if I don't have all my stuff, right? That can come later. So we really encourage folks, especially with that, records are lost. It takes a while.
Right.
And this is another reason why it's really critical for folks to come in and start a process. So this is a federal statute. It's a 60-day clock. It began on February 20th. It goes until April 20th. If you get in and you initiate an application with FEMA and SBA, you're okay. We do have things where sometimes people are out of country, or maybe they just didn't get the word out, or maybe there was some kind of a ADA issue that they didn't hear or they aren't familiar with it. We can start a late application. Typically, we ask folks who work with their congressional or their local representative to start that process so that we make sure we get it in there. But in general, though, it's really important that people start a process. Once you're in the system, you're okay.
And so they have to be in the system, if I remember right, by April 24th
Yes.
of
And
2024.
they can start that process online.
April 20th.
They can start the process online and come into the center later. And another thing that I'd like to throw out to folks is that sometimes you get classic government situation, you get what's called a denial letter. That is not a stop. That is an opportunity to come into a disaster resource center and talk to some of the folks and ask, how can we resolve this? Where do we go next? And that's why we're here in the community to help people with that.
Just making sure Commissioner French doesn't have questions. So one of the thoughts I have is, this is pretty new. I mean, just last week was, I think, when you guys came into town. And so with that, how many people have already signed up and have already gotten into the system? that you've seen so far?
So if it's probably not a surprise that actually we had people starting to enroll in the program because the word got out before they'd actually found disaster recovery locations. So my understanding, we'd already had a couple of dozen even before we initiated it last Thursday. I don't have a current number, but I can get back to you on that. If it was an SBA thing, I could give you that number fairly quickly, but because we're working under that umbrella of FEMA, they're kind of the lead in terms of getting that information out. But that is information that certainly we want you to have access to. But I can tell you for sure that before the centers opened, we'd already had a couple of dozen people that had already started the process. And my understanding is it started approaching close to 100 by the end of the first day.
Okay, and so just clarification for my purpose, I guess. So if they sign up through FEMA, then they're automatically signed up through you as well, or do they have to sign up for both?
So right now, what happens is that there's a toggle to go and sign up for SBA. We certainly encourage people to double check and make sure they're with SBA. There's going to be a change occurring, not with this disaster, but going forward. I mentioned that dynamic where they come in and they talk to FEMA and then they're asked to apply for a loan with SBA. If they get denied, they come back to FEMA. In the next disaster, there's been some changes. FEMA is going to take care of the whole suite. They're going to look at all the opportunities to make it a little easier because this confused people. Some people are like, well, I'm not a small business. I don't need loans. Sometimes people are stopping. So we don't want that to happen. That's why it's really important that people follow through and they be engaged and they come down with the information if they feel like they haven't heard anything or they got a letter, a denial letter. We do have a list. Your Office of Emergency Service has been phenomenal in terms of getting us the people that they've been in contact with, and we reach out and we follow up on the days. Some days we're not open, or some hours we're not open. I know that at the location at Medical Lake, there's some hours where we end early because I believe there's some public meetings that occur in that building. So during those times, our staff are actually calling out to the community, out to people. We've been given a list. We haven't, especially if they haven't come in.
Thank you. And Chandra?
Yes.
You're here, our Emergency Management Director. So how many people do you think total we have that should be registering, and do you know what the numbers are yet?
So as of Friday, and I just texted our state person to see if we got additional over the weekend, but as of Friday, we had 265 who were registered in the FEMA system. And we're anticipating, we would like to see somewhere around 850 if everybody, if we're successful in getting everybody who was impacted to come in and register. That's kind of our goal number is 800 to 800.
Okay. Well, any other questions? Okay. I would just say thank you very much for being here. Really appreciate it. Hopefully the press will pick up on this because I think that's important to get out to our citizens that we think 850 people have been affected and only 200 and how many?
265 is the number I had on Friday.
265 have signed up. So we want to make sure that everybody has that opportunity to sign up. And again, has to be done by April 20th of 2024.
Yep.
Just to reiterate the date. Okay.
Good.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, and I did give the clerk some information for each of you. Some fact sheets, some stuff on how SBA works, the 3 steps for loans, those kinds of things. Here's my business card. Do not hesitate to contact me. I do want to let you know that I've been very much in touch with your congressional delegation as well as your state and local state elected leaders as well on this, and I am your lead person on this disaster during the time that it goes on, so do not hesitate to email if you have questions.
Thank you. Very much appreciate that, George.
Thank you all. Good to
And
see
Joel, thank you for being here as well. Appreciate it. And we will just be encouraging people to get signed up.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
I think, which one of you reintroduced me to Dixie?
Oh, by email? Are you the one that
Yes,
we were
Al
emailing
Chapman,
back and forth? Yes.
We were long ago, business associates.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, both of you, very much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
He's a great guy.
Yes.
Okay, so we're right on time. That's gonna take us then next to Randy Bishop, you are, or, so Ashley, sorry.
You're good.
I'm hobbling over.
Randy's name was first.
I know, I saw that too. All good.
Sorry.
No worries.
Yes. But his title was so long in between. Like, I couldn't get to the end of the sentence to
Gotta shorten it.
No, I actually looked this morning too and I was like, oh, is Randy presenting now? And I'm like, oh, there I am.
What?
Like.
Well, thank you for being here today to talk about ERP.
Yeah, so we haven't been here for a little bit, so wanted just to provide an update of how our ERP replacement project is going and where we're at in the process. So just as a reminder, we are moving from PeopleSoft to Workday. We started the process of this about a year and a half ago now, actually, when we went out for RFP and met with the vendors and selected. So we are in the thick of it now. Next slide, please, Ron. So we are, kind of difficult to see, but you should have this printed. Thank you, Gina. But wanted to show you the high-level project timeline. So when we started this process and determined that we were going to work with Workday, we also are working with a third-party integrations and implementation specialist called Guidehouse. And Guidehouse is helping us and helped us through the process of realizing we really needed to break this into 4 phases. Trying to do everything at one time just really isn't realistic when you're looking at a complete system replacement. So what you see on this slide are the 4 different phases based on the color. So the first phase that we determined to work through and go live with is financials. And financials includes all things you would think would be included in that. So your budget, your
Accounts payable.
Yeah. Receivable, banking,
Anything that financial
grants.
services done, Jenny, grants,
Yep.
projects.
yeah, procurement, all sorts of stuff. So we determined to go forward with that one first. And so as you can see on the timeline, that began in August of 2023. We are the little dashed line there with the little man with his backpack on because we're hiking up the mountain. Yeah, we're trudging up it. And so as you can see, we are through a good chunk of finance. We are actually getting ready to start working on testing and validation, actually. So we've made it through discovery, which was reviewing our initial processes, validating the requirements that we thought we needed when we put the original RFP together. From there, we went through 3 phases of architect and configuration, and now we are moving into the validation and testing with a go live of this late summer, so end of August, early September, for go live, where we will transition out of PeopleSoft into Workday for our financials. At the same time, right now, we have also just launched HCM, which is HR and payroll. And so as you can see there, we have a bit of an overlap going right now. So HR payroll has moved through the current state and validations. Through the month of March, that group is allowed to take a little bit of breathing room just to go take all of their training, because each group has to go through required training with Workday so that they understand the system as they're moving forward. So most staff have anywhere between 32 and 100 hours of training to get done in the month of March that are contributors to this project, and the finance team did the same thing back in October of 2023. So they're working on that right now, and then they will move into architect and configuration stage 1 in April. And we'll do 3 stages for architect and configuration with the HR and payroll, just like finance. And then we'll move into testing, validation, and go live, with our go live being January of 2025. The reason for that 2025 is really important, as it's a new payroll year. And it's much more difficult to create W-2s at the end of 2025, beginning of 2026, when you're pulling from 2 different source systems. And so our goal is that go live of January of 2025, so that we are using one system when we are in 2026 making all of our year-end reports and the auditors doing all of their reporting.
So timing on that, I just wanted to, make sure we understand it. that's also then based on why we're changing our payroll timing that from our discussion last week,
Yes.
correct,
Yeah.
to meet this timeline of April.
Yes, the reason why we're doing that is because when you test so before we go live with Workday HCM payroll, we run two payrolls at the same time, one in PeopleSoft, one in Workday. We're validating, right? So we needed to make sure that we were on our feet with the pay cycle that we wanted to be on, and that we'd already worked all the bugs out, moving to the normal pay. And so that's why we moved, to your point, Commissioner, moving to the normal pay in April of this year, so that we have time to adequately move everyone to the same pay cycle, so that when we do our testing at the end of 2024, before we go live in 2025, we have the same consistent pay schedules, and so we're able to 100% validate those payrolls in Workday before we actually go live in Workday.
Thank you, I just think that's a good reminder to, all of our employees as to why that transition needed to happen at this point in time, so it worked into the new software system as well. So,
Yep,
thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, those parallel payrolls are critical. Yes, thank you.
Everybody wants to get their paycheck right.
Exactly, yep.
Thank you.
Yes, and so as you can see on here, there's two additional phases. The third phase is actually at the bottom, that light pink color. That is our adaptive, and that is the replacement of Questica. So it's an amazing forecasting and budget tool that we're moving to, that will be utilized, and it will all be one part of Workday. So you can see the light pink there from when we'll do the same process, which is the current state validation, A, B, and C for architect and configure, test, and then go live. And then the light pink bar on the back end of that little star is actually the support that will be very dedicated to that specific function as we're looking at creation of budgets for 2026. Since we start that process mid-year in 2025. And then the light tan color is kind of the wraparound of HR. So we separated HR into primary and then some secondary functionality just because of the scope of employee that it touches. So the light tan color you're seeing is the learning side of the employees. So the online learning system, processes for it's called Journeys, where we're creating events for our employees to be able to go through these different open enrollments or just different opportunities where we're doing trainings that are built within the system that enable us to do performance management, coaching, all sorts of great things. But we really decided we wanted to peel those out of the main HR, because main HR we needed to focus on things like payroll, recruiting, employee records, W-2s, benefits, the bulk of kind of the regulatory and the benefit section for HR. So that's our timeline. The other thing that's not built into this color code that you don't see are the 2 months of support that are also a part of the contract. So after go live, as part of the agreement we have with Workday and Guidehouse, there are 2 months of direct support for us to continue to use consulting as we need to ensure that we have this project stood up and where we need to, which is a really critical piece to say. It's really important that we continue to stay on track with our timelines. We currently are, but recognizing this is ARP funded, our timelines are absolutely critical. So if we're shifting or missing the mark, we get into a place where we're at risk of not using all of the funds through the duration of the project, as we've said. And so we are really doing our best to stay tight on these timelines, and so far have been on track. Next slide, please. What that means, though, is we're using a ton of county resources. I mean, you absolutely can't see all these names, and that's okay. You don't need to, but I wanted to make a visual of how many people across the county are actively contributing to this project. And when I say actively contributing, I mean every week they're in multiple hours of projects. And so we have had a huge demand on all of our departments across the county, which for some groups has gone a little better than others. Some have a bit more staffing and cross-training and haven't seen maybe the same turnover that others have. But this has been incredibly impactful. So we're extremely grateful to the department leaders who are helping to free up these people's time. But the biggest risk we do have right now on this project is resource allocation. And the amount of people that we're taking from their day-to-day jobs to help us make sure this project is successful, and still trying to balance the work that's being done in the county. So we're continuing to work through that the best we can. We're continuing to tap on people for the different phases of this project. What's interesting though, and one thing that's just always been a risk that I've noticed at the county is we do have singular people in really critical roles. For example, everyone in this room knows the name Richard Shaw, right? Richard Shaw is incredible. He is the IT point person for all things system, and he is one person, right? And so for me, it's always been incredibly nerve-wracking that we have one person that's really the key person for all of this. He still is, but IT is doing a good job at back training a second person into that. For the HR department, Linda Fields is the person that knows all things HRIS, and so she's one that we're backfilling with a secondary person that understands everything she knows. But what that means is a lot of our departments are thin because not only do we have our main person who's already doing that, but we're trying to train in a secondary person in case one of these people hits the lottery and leaves us tomorrow, right? We don't want to be up a creek. Auditor's office is another group. They have one person that knows how to run payroll start to end right now.
And the problem with them is they're not only in payroll HCM, but they're also dealing with financial at the same time.
Yep.
So they're getting hit on two fronts for that one person.
Yep. And those three resources I talked about actually all three are on both sides of the fence. So it's been a very interesting, eye-opening process for us to really identify where we have some risk with personnel and where we need to kind of beef up the bench, so to speak. But that does then, again, take those people that we're training out of the mix of the day-to-day as well. So we're doing our best to find a balance. There's, as we move into validation, testing, and then the development of the training materials, we're really trying to figure out how do we accommodate all of this in our current state, and I'll likely be back here talking to you guys in a few weeks about potential ideas of what additional we could be doing across the county, but really wanted you to have this list just to understand the scope of people that are actively working on this project day in and day out. We also have a whole group that we've identified as change champions, and these people are from each of our departments who will be learning the system, who have already started learning about what's going on, who are going to be the point people for their departments as we provide training, as we roll this out. So it's a huge list, and we are so grateful for everyone that's been participating, but just wanted to really point out it's been a big ask. Next slide, please, Ron. And this next slide really does show the resource utilization. So I showed you the names. This is the utilization of time. So everything you see in a dark red box, that's a full-time 32 to 40 hours per week need for an employee to be dedicated to. You can see the sliding scale of color that shows the different hours and resources needed based on what week we're in, what month we're in, what phase of the project we're in, but it is a huge ask. And so one thing we've been working with our department heads is that multiple staff can be used to help balance some of these resources, but someone like Kyle, who has Shannon Berkey, who is phenomenal, she's thin. She had a retirement, she had someone coming in for retirement, has another one on the way, has another person that just put in a notice, and so it's looking at this, recognizing that, you know, Shannon used to have 4 people in her department she could have spread the love between, and now she's 1, right? And so as we have these things happen, we're really looking at our staff and our model, asking, okay, what can we do? Where can we supplement? Who can we plug in? How can we help? So this is a constant thing that we're working through pretty much on a weekly basis with our steering committee, with the individual leaders that we need to help support, and it's incredible that we're doing this project, but it is an incredible, as you can see, ask from our department. So we're excited to go live. We think this is going to be amazing for our staff. The people that have seen this, that are getting in, are so excited, especially as they're seeing the demos and the configuration. It saves so much time and effort. There are so many efficiencies to be gained. So many of our manual processes are going to be streamlined. Something as simple as an integration where a file automatically sends from one system to another is going to save us hours a week. Most of our departments have employees who are literally downloading files right now, putting them in the right format, and then sending them to the next server or location, right? All of these things will be greatly impacted, but it is a big ask until we get there. So wanted just to provide you guys that update so you knew where we were at and what's going on. This project, like I said, every day, every week there are meetings happening, and would be happy to take any questions you guys have for us.
Commissioner French.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ashley, is this a product that we are buying off the shelf, or is this a product that is got the flexibility to where we are incorporating it into our system, or our system is changing to accommodate this software package?
So this is a replacement off the shelf. So this system is intentionally one that, it does have some configuration ability to it, but we're being incredibly intentional not to countyize it. So that we we are looking at leading practices. Government sector is one of their largest client group. So we're looking at what do other government entities do, what do other groups in Washington, like Clark County, Yakima County, the state of Washington, WSU, how have they, Kitsap, how have they worked through this and utilized the out-of-the-box solution as much as possible, so that we are not having to, like what we've done in PeopleSoft is we have really customized it to a point where we've backed ourselves into complete inefficiencies. When we're having to do updates, things are breaking. When we're doing tax runs, things are breaking. It's not efficient. And so our goal, Commissioner French, is to use the out-of-the-box system as much as possible with a few customizations if needed, because they're specifically required for the county. That's also why we have so many people included in this project, so that we had the different departments working with us and making these decisions and understanding, so that we were ensuring that we were still meeting the RCWs, the needs, but doing it in a way that would be creating efficiencies and impactful for our departments.
Thank you.
But for the software itself, it cannot be customized because it is in the cloud. They do updates, which is why we can select our configuration. So we're trying to use best practices for the configuration, but we will not be customizing it like we did with PeopleSoft.
For the budget forecasting financial piece, the pink, right? What's the name of that program?
Adaptive
Planning. Yeah, and it's within Workday though. It
It
is
is in
Workday.
Workday.
It's
Okay.
a piece of work.
That was what I was wondering.
She had said Questica, that's our current one.
Yes.
That we're gonna be replacing with the Workday one.
Okay, thank you.
Again, because those are all separate systems that then we were trying to figure out how to make it all work together. So this is gonna be the great thing of just having Workday and all their configurations within it, being able to work together and seamlessly. And should be at the point where we can actually go on and like ask for a report.
And not,
Sunday.
Oh,
not
it's-
just ask,
Sunday.
you'll have
It's,
dashboards.
Demand.
Yeah, so the reporting function is phenomenal, but that's part of what's so wonderful about Workday is their canned reports are great, but the dashboarding that we'll be setting up will be incredible. So department heads will have direct line of sight, elected officials will have direct line of sight to the data that they're looking for, and really be able to open at any time. It's all live real-time data also, so what our expenses are at, what our revenues are at, what our different accounts are. I mean, all of that is in one location. Yeah, it's going to be amazing, and based on different user roles, you'll have the ability to see those reports or those dashboards.
Just even budget to actuals and all of that. And there's a lot of, currently, one department thinks they've got this report and it doesn't match to a report that budget has. And so there's been differences of opinions on how much budget is
We'll
left.
have a real
So,
income
yeah.
statement.
So it will be awesome at that point. So yes, so no, looking forward to it. So I just have to say thank you guys for all your hard work too, because I know it's a huge process that started a year ago. So yeah, thank you. Okay, that's gonna then take us to Ms. Barber.
Might need one more chair. Still have two coming I don't see yet, Commissioner.
Okay,
Let me double check.
a little ahead of schedule, I Yes, compared to the schedule.
You can get that here. Just waiting on Judge Fassbender is not here yet. Okay, you're fine. Give just a minute to see if Judge Fassbender
I
joins us.
think she's just arriving. We need one more
Here she is.
chair?
Yeah, I need one more chair, please. We want you right up to the front, Judge.
Well, thank you.
Your pleasure, appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Okay, good morning. Well, today's topic is going to be about the rideshare program and supported release. And also, we're going to talk about the MacArthur Capstone Grant as well. Joining me, go ahead, Aaron.
Aaron Stromberger, Pretrial Services Manager.
Diane Lindquist, Criminal Data Analyst.
Jennifer Fossbender, Spokane County District Court.
Katie McNulty, Deputy Prosecutor, and I supervise first appearances.
So we kind of hit a junction point where we've been talking about a lot of recommendations that have percolated out of the core group to kind of inform on directions going forward and what we'd like to see for a capstone, and kind of talking through not only supported release, but the rideshare program as well. It's at the point where I need the board to help direct us on where you'd like to see us go in the future here and how we'd have to handle these current programs that we have, along with steps moving forward with the capstone as well. So if you recall, the rideshare program and the supported release program are in motion right now. We'll talk about the performance of the rideshare program. Diane will talk about that and kind of what we're seeing as far as how it's adapting to some trial periods where we ran out of money, had to shift money to it, reestablish it, work with the courts, and so forth. But in your packet, you're gonna find out that other folks have tried the rideshare program. I don't know if you had a chance to read through it or not, but there are outcomes, and I'll talk about some of those as well. On the supported release, you recall that it was a stalled project when I came on board. We wanted to get it going. There was a concern about having to return the money or get the program in motion. We did get the program in motion, and currently it works out of district court with referrals from the public defenders for those who would be available to go out on this program with some wraparound services that are provided by a contract through Pioneer Health Services. We've had some challenges along the way, mostly with participation. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. In the rideshare, the reoccurring term for the rideshare is it's an expensive program. It provides an Uber ride to those that need rides to get to court. They can get to treatment, they can get to several other things that the court has ordered. We've seen a strong use of it on the failure to comply side, which is court-ordered appointments. And then we've seen a mild improvement over on the failure to appear side of it. And Diane will go into those a little bit more in depth on that part of it. So as we move forward, next slide, Ron. Oh, you're already there, never mind. Go ahead, Diane.
So this is the rideshare program performance. As we all know, the rideshare program is to provide free rides to any court-related appointments for individuals involved with the criminal court system. And we have two parts for that rideshare program. One is the Uber one, which is very expensive, and that's the one that has costed us $268,000 since we started. And then the other one is the bus passes version of it, where we've only spent $5,000 since it started in July 2022. Out of the whole program, you can see that we have provided, out of those 21 ones, we have provided 13,067 rides. We have provided 1,027 bus passes. Pioneer Human Services that helps us man the calls has actually received 8,451 calls. And in total, we have actually helped 995 individuals with our Uber program and 419 individuals with our bus program. So that's a lot of people, but that's a very small percentage of who we deal with in the criminal justice system as a whole. If you look at the rideshare program, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry to cut in so quick with a question. So 995 individuals have taken 13,000 Uber rides, so about 13 rides per person?
Yes. And you can
Wow,
see at the
okay.
circle that surrounds all those numbers, that's the purpose of the ride. You can see 67% of that is the court-ordered class and treatment. And the court-ordered class and treatment is usually like a weekly thing that they need. And you can see therefore that the use of the program is really to work with the failure to comply post-adjudication requirements. Court hearing is only 17% of total ride shares we have done. And then even probation is really those weekly meetings that almost a failure to comply reason as well.
So that's why I come back, Commissioner Kearns on. It's helped on the failure to comply side, which are those reoccurring appointments, they'll schedule them out in advance. And that's what you're seeing as far as that big, large amount on that side.
But like those that are doing the bus passes, it's less than 3 rides per person. So, okay.
Commissioner Jordan.
Is that, in terms of the court ordered classes or treatment, is that most often like a weekly or monthly or something UA requirement for
Up
testing?
to bi-weekly. So some, especially our therapeutic court participants, when they first enter into the program, are required to UA 8 times per month.
Okay.
So that could be on top of treatment requirements, 2 UAs plus treatment class. So they could be court-ordered services 3 days a week.
Just to follow up, can you kind of explain, Mike, what we were talking about how the bus passes are currently given out? That's part, it seems like there's a difference in how these two things are offered.
Yeah, we have at pretrial services bus passes, 2-hour bus passes and day-long bus passes, excuse me. So they do have to come to our office to get those. Usually they're checking in with our, on our Superior Court side, pretrial monitored release, or they're in our office to apply for a public defender, whether district court or Superior Court. So to obtain the bus pass, they actually have to be in our office, and usually they're sent from court. Judge Fassbender sends them down. So I think that probably explains why we're handing out less of bus passes, because they actually have to come down and get them, whereas Uber, they just call from home and pick that up. So, but pretrial services hands out bus passes. I believe municipal court does too on their side, but right in our office.
And predominantly, the majority of those rides are to get home.
Correct.
Yeah, so that kind of gives kind of an overview of that. Any more questions on this? Yeah, go ahead.
And so this is just the data from district court.
No,
This is Superior Court, all of it, and municipal court.
Okay, so this is the total amount, but then the next slide is just data from district court.
Just
Okay.
district court, that was a request, and that's what we focused on.
Right.
Okay.
So if you go to the next slide, this is the FTA performance of only district court. So out of all district court defendants from January 2019 to January 2024, there's only 257 rideshare participants out of 21,000 defendants during that period. So the participation rate of to the rideshare program is only 1.21%. So you are dealing with a very small segment. But that is because the rideshare program is designed to help those that are in that lower bracket of income. Overall FTA rate during that period of district court for that 21,000 defendants improved by 7.2% before and after the rideshare program is initiated. So the FTA rate before rideshare is 11.25%, and then when the rideshare went live, that goes down to 10.44%. So that 0.8% difference between the two is that 7% improvement. However, if you look at that small segment, that 1.21%, those 257 individuals that really participated in rideshare, their FTA rate improved by 37.1%, which is that 9.7% pre-rideshare FTA rate down to 6.10 rideshare FTA rate when the rideshare is live. Again, we have to caveat that some of these, some other FTA efforts may have contributed to the reduction of the FTA rates in both groups, because during this time, the hotline was also working and so are other programs.
And then district court also has some efforts they're doing as well. So we can't absolutely say it's all due to the rideshare. There's other efforts that are going on that could contribute to that as well.
Any questions for this one?
Just so I'm clear, so your pre-ride share you use in January of 2019 to November of 2021, so that's sort of what you're using as your baseline. And then after that, I mean, did FTAs increase at all due to the pandemic? Because I mean, you got a pandemic thrown right in the middle of that time period. Do you think, is that skewing your numbers at all? Did that inflate your FTA numbers?
We had during the pandemic,
And I
a
know
lot
there
of
were
our
some
court
shut down.
hearings were shut down and we moved to Zoom appearances, and the Washington State Supreme Court allowed us to do
Right.
virtual appearances. And then after the pandemic, when we were reopened up, court rules were changed to allow for still virtual appearances. So we do have some participants that are appearing by Zoom for our court appearances. So that's helped as well.
Can you compare, I mean, is this an apples to apples comparison when you have a pandemic thrown in and
Well, and that's
sort
why
of
we're
rule
looking at
changes, so-
comparing to the numbers now. So 2019 was our last regular year. And then what we're comparing to as far as back up and fully running again after we're taking out that segment.
Okay, cause this makes it look, they're using 2019 to 2021. It's not just 19, you're using essentially 19, 20, and 21 data.
19 was our last regular, so to speak, year.
But it's been rolled in with 2020 and 2021 data. Under pre-ride share, it's January of
And that's
19
where I'll
to-
have to pass it over to Diane, cause she's the one that does as far as the numbers. But I can just tell you as far as in court, what the difference was.
Okay,
But as far as the actual numbers and how they're put together, I couldn't answer that question
Okay.
specifically.
So the first one, the pre-rideshare numbers, January 2019, November 20 is up to November 2021. COVID happened back in 2020, so that will be in there. So any changes and improvement done to our system because of COVID will be baked into the pre-rideshare program. But that also means that when the rideshare went live, those things have already been baked in. So that the COVID number, the FTA numbers may have been higher or lower prior to that COVID, but they're all going to be in the same bucket. If you are interested in seeing the FTA rate throughout that time, I do have that in my files, but it's not here in this presentation, and I can send that to you separately.
yeah, no, I mean, I'm asking, is
You
this
just look at the
good
rate.
data the way it's broken up? Because, I mean, you've got, your baseline is a portion of pre-COVID, where COVID wasn't a thing, mixed with COVID. So when you blend those numbers together and then you're comparing them with a time frame where COVID is essentially gone, are those two good data sets to be comparing? And that's my question. I mean, if you're doing a statistical analysis, are those two good data sets to make a comparison with? That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, so Commissioner, remember during Measure 1, when we did the Measure 1, we had that conversation. Did we take the whole range? Or do we include that significant drop in population when it came back up? Same thing, we could go from post-COVID to now and look at that range.
But we went back 30 years.
Yeah, right, true, I know
So-
that, yeah, but what I'm saying is, whether or not to include the COVID year
Yeah.
or count it as an anomaly it always comes up when we get involved with this.
I'm sure. I think that if anything, Commissioner Kearns, the number's gonna be lower than pre-2019 because there was all these other efforts going on, right? You were making phone calls to people, right? In pretrial services, you had like 4 extra employees.
Right.
During that 19 to 21 timeframe.
Correct, yeah.
So, I mean, the number, if you go like just looking at 2019 or 2018, it's probably gonna be higher than 11.25% FTA. So so even with that rideshare, I guess what I learned from this slide is even with all those things going on and COVID and not as many hearings, right, to fail to appear to, it's still driving down. Rideshare does seem to reduce FTAs.
For 1.21% of the population. Is what I'm saying.
Well,
So
maybe.
you have to look at it, you have to
Right.
look at the whole picture.
Right.
Yeah.
But is there a reason why, I would have to ask those who are experts, if there's 21,000 defendants, maybe not all of them needed to use the program? I don't know. I mean, that's a lot of other stuff we'd have to dig into.
Right.
You're talking about the high needs, high risk individuals, that 1%, versus other individuals that are court ordered to do services are, very functional into making those appointments. So you don't have that failure to appear or failure to comply rate, because they are folks that have jobs that are sustainable, that have still a license to get
That
to.
have family members that can help them out.
Can help, exactly.
Can those who know kind of talk about how rideshare is offered to people? Is it offered to every defendant? How does that conversation go? Is it in court? Is it really the team? Vary by case?
No, it's offered to everyone.
Okay.
We do have business cards that are in all the courtrooms. All the public defenders have the information as well as private attorneys. And so it's offered to everyone, but it's those individuals that we've seen need it that are the ones that are using it. So that's where it is offered to all.
Okay.
Can I just follow up on that so I guess I'm trying to understand, are you concerned, Mike, that not more people are using it? Or, because it seems like it's those who are the ones that are most challenged with transportation that are likely to use it, right? If you have your own vehicle or someone that can drive you, like you said, there's like 21,000 defendants came to the system, and a lot of them do have other resources to help them, right?
My concern, Commissioner, is that it's cast too large of a net. I think that we need to narrowly define on what we're targeting as far as who's available for those rides. Instead of offering it to everyone, look at those that are in the most needs and kind of monitor the way that it's being used. Right now, as the judge stated, it's given to everyone. Do you see what I'm saying? They're kind of targeting, trying to range it in, but I think that it should have some more better parameters around it on who's receiving the rides. For instance, if a person needs to get to court and his house is outside of a bus stop, he might benefit from a bus stop just as well as he would from an Uber ride, depending on where you look at it, those type of things. So I don't think that when it was set up, that those parameters were necessarily put in place. And then the other question is that when you look at the rideshare program, about 40, I can't remember exactly, 47% is used by the city of Spokane. Is that do we more narrowly focus that on the county's efforts and some of those conversations that have to be had? And so really today, what we're trying to do is present the data and give you enough information to give us some direction before we expend a lot more time on this moving forward. And that's kind of where we're at right now with it. Does that make sense? Okay. Next slide. Okay, so what was asked of me was to kind of look at a high level, what does it cost to actually handle a warrant? So I had Medea contact all the departments, and they provided to me what they felt was their hourly cost and how much time would be expended on it. You can look down through all the different ones, and one of the nuances is whether or not they stay in jail or not. Predominantly, most of those would be a book in and out. But there will be some that have to stay overnight depending on what other charges they have accompanying it. So you can kind of read down, went from law enforcement, through pretrial services, we involved the courts along with the prosecutors. And so we kind of broke it out in two sections here. One is for non-overnight stay and one is for an overnight stay. And you can see the difference. And obviously, if they're going to stay overnight, there's a significant difference because of the cost for the jail and all the staff involved with the jail. And you look at the Uber ride, one way or both ways, predominantly most of our Uber rides have been found to be two-way, there and back. And so kind of lean more towards that $37.62. If you look down, it's just, you'll see the differences in the prices that go down. This is really, really high level. It doesn't include all the M&O that goes into it, doesn't include all the other, fees that would be associated with it. It's just the person that's touching the warrant, their hourly wage, duration of handling the warrant. And that's what this little breakout shows. Okay. Any questions on, and then, Commissioner Jordan had asked that, did I kind of look at this? And so that's really what it is. It's a presentation of what it is. And I hope this addresses what you were looking for, yeah. And so I've included that in there as well. Sorry, my voice is kind of hoarse today. Okay, next slide.
So this is the supported release program performance. We know that the supported release program is created to provide eligible individuals awaiting trial case management, care coordination, direct services, and or referrals to community-based services. And it started running back in January 2023, and it has a contract end date of December 2024. So it still has this whole year of 2024 to run. We have a total fund there for $358,339,000 of which is contracted with Pioneer Human Services. And so far, as of for the whole of 2023, 42% of that, or $151,000, has already been used. In terms of the program outcomes, 84 individuals have been referred into the program since it started, but as of now, there's currently no active enrollees. And because of all the challenges that we are facing with the program. Any questions with supported release?
So this is referral based. It comes out of the public defender's office to the court. And in talking to the public defender's office, they did have a period where they had a changeover as far as the staff were involved, and some of the referrals weren't necessarily getting made. But I think the real indicator here is that it's voluntary, and the majority of the people that get released from jail, as long as they make their court appearance, this doesn't penalize them at all for being not involved with this part of it. And so you're relying on human behavior and whether or not they're going to partake in the program or simply just make their court dates and avoid a warrant. So that's really what it boils down to. This offers wraparound services from housing, counseling, peer navigation. There's several resources that are available to them. It's whether or not they choose to take advantage of those resources. And what we're seeing from the data is that they haven't. It's been about a year, and over the evaluation, that's a good period of time to evaluate the program. And I think it's time for a pivot that I'm going to talk about moving forward for the capstone on this part of it. So, any questions on it? I think we all know, we've all talked through the supported release, we know what the challenges are. And so I think it's time for us to kind of reevaluate that and maybe see if we can pivot on that.
Could I ask one question? I remember in pretrial you have an individual who is a mental health expert to be able to help folks navigate some of their mental health needs in the system. When people are referred to her, is that voluntary? I'm just wondering how, I know she's been effective in meeting with folks and directing folks to services, but I was wondering if that's voluntary or if that stuff is usually court ordered. Just
Primarily, yeah, voluntary for the most part. We're referring folks to her so that she can refer to other resources in the community. She does head up our Second Look program, which we're also trying to revive. Those conditions are voluntary as well, but unless the court orders it specifically in a release condition, yeah, it would be voluntary at this point.
Which is a challenge. That's always the challenge, is whether or not they want to, it's human behavior, whether they want to participate or not.
Right. I was just curious how, cause I thought that was mostly voluntary, but I wasn't sure. So there are some voluntary programs that we have, and they can be successful, but this one is not, it's not showing a lot of success. Okay.
And I think it's time, like I said, to pivot. If we're gonna continue to.
We tried.
To use the yeah.
We tried for a while.
We did, and like I said, it was a stalled pilot. And then you remember Sheriff Knezovich and all of us kind of rallied the forces around it to get it going, and then, but this is a performance over a year, so I think it's time to take a second look.
Yeah, cause I remember, I mean, we were sold that this was gonna be a game changer for the courts, having sort of this middle ground as opposed to ORs or setting bail, that there were gonna be a lot of people that qualified for this. I'm surprised only 84 over this whole time frame. I mean, and I can remember that the prosecutor's office told us this was gonna be the outcome, that nobody was gonna follow through, nobody was actually gonna do it. And there were a lot of people saying the prosecutor's office was wrong, but I mean, the data has played out. I mean, Larry's crystal ball was spot on, is what it looks like. But I mean, again, we were sold that this was going to be offered a lot. This was gonna be a huge game changer. This was gonna revolutionize it, and it appears that did not work out.
Because I think in other states that were doing it, other areas that MacArthur, it's required, it wasn't voluntary. Is that correct?
The model where you see it have teeth to it is more effective, like through a probation office or those type of things, because then there's something that on the other end of it to participate or not. This one was modeled from New York, and I know there was a lot of conversation right up front when it was introduced and was presented to you all that they had some concerns that we weren't the same as New York. The prosecutors had some concerns as well. And so when we launched this, we knew up front that it was gonna be kind of a gamble to see, because when you look at these things, every state is different. You know, we don't have a unified court system. We have 3 courts. We have all these different nuances. So it's hard to really predict how effective a program is working from a different state that would work in the state of Washington. And so I think when this was presented to you, I think that was one of the things that we had called out. You know, all of us had some concerns on that part of it. But like I said, it was a stalled pilot. It was that or give the money back. And so it was worth an effort. And so we took a leap of faith here. And as you said, there's not much of an outcome on it.
Doesn't the municipal court have a strong kind of, and I'm not too familiar with it, but don't they use probation pretty actively to try pretrial to gear people towards services and get some of their basic needs met so that they can, pretrial? I know that they do a lot through their probation department.
Right.
And they have people come back and check in frequently. I was just wondering, have we looked at their model, and is that something that we could, maybe I'm getting ahead to your capstone.
You're getting ahead.
Okay.
But to your
Sorry.
point, so if they're on probation, they've already gone through the court process and they're out on probation, okay?
Oh, I see.
See, so it's operated through their pretrial services, like what we're gonna recommend as our pivot to do.
Okay, yeah,
your
probation is when you've already,
It's
Right. Yep.
So a lot of what maybe municipal court is doing is trying to prevent people from coming back.
Ending up in that position in the first place.
So preventing recidivism. But maybe not, it's not the same goal as the pretrial, like trying to keep people engaged so that when they do appear, they can move through the system and not come back then. I don't know, I'm trying to
They have a
understand.
pretrial services department as well as a probation department.
Okay, so they do.
And so that's where theirs is on campus, and their pretrial service that has a similar program is very
Okay.
successful. And that's where,
Yeah,
that's where Director Sparber's gonna get into as far
I
as the
think
pivot that we're
JMI,
looking at.
when they came to visit, the MacArthur consultant was saying having it be on campus that they've seen in other communities has been more successful.
And this one's off campus.
Yeah.
This support release program currently is off
Got it,
campus.
okay.
And, I think as important is where it's located in the justice process. I think at the end of it, where they're going for a release, I think it'd be better served to be at the front end of the pretrial services,
Got it.
you know, rather than waiting to get and let them out and have a choice whether they participate or not. So more personalized touch, you know, they're looking at their files, all of those things are a benefit to it. And I think that's why it works so well for the city, is because it's.
I do like it, that they do some sort of assessment process, right, pre-trial, to kind of see what those human needs that Pioneer's been trying to help with, what those are.
Correct.
Okay.
So rather than having two separate ones like we have right now, we would try to go to a one assessment, shorter abbreviated one that would help to identify their needs and where we can most help them to make their court appearances. So kind of an overview of the capstone grant. The MacArthur Foundation is providing a 2-year capstone. And so the capstone is, go one more slide, Ron, or is it two more? Two more, I'm sorry. It's caught up here. So the capstone is unique. It's not to invent new processes. It's meant to sustain and help with the momentum already in place. So we have some pilots that are working well, like with, we changed the citation, which just seemed to be helping. We've got these other initiatives that are working as well. So it's meant to kind of see those through to sustainability for the county, okay? And so when you're looking at the capstone, it has to be pre-existing endeavors that we've already launched, and then looking forward to how, if the board so desires, we move forward and sustain those programs. 2-year capstone grant, like I said, it's sustained momentum of work that we've already done. It is to bring about some more stabilized and implement strategies that around the sustainability part. Submission deadline is March 21st. I can tell you right now that we haven't wasted time, that with your approval to move forward on this, we've got the capstone application nearly completed. And it's a long process. We've already done all the work up front. I've worked with JMI and with the MacArthur Foundation to get as much of it done in advance so that turnaround could be a little more quick, okay? And then the overall capstone value is $540,000 over the 2-year period. Next slide, please. So what I mentioned before is kind of a repivot. So one is existing program, and they're facing challenges. One, the ride share, lack of funding, and we're gonna come up with funds to sustain that. And 2 is the supported release, which is lack of participation. What we are recommending and with the core group's input on this is realigning these pilots to the front end of the system in the Office of Pretrial Services. The ride share also would be a move to the front end, and an ask of the capstone would include the ride share program. And that would be to aid the court date reminder and warrant avoidance strategy, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And then also the support and release would be available to provide wraparound services for the monitored release folks that are going out as another, way of producing some of the necessary services and necessary things to maybe help avoid them from becoming a warrant. Next slide, please. So it's kind of a 3-part process, and we'll kind of cover each of those as we're going through here. One, as I had stated, is the existing programs. You'll see supported release offerings with the wraparound services. You see the rideshare program and the bus initiatives. Those will be embedded in the capstone. The second box is kind of the request of it, and that is an additional pretrial services officers to help with the monitored release out of district court. And I have the Judge Fassbender here to kind of talk about that just a little bit. The monitored release program.
So, and that's where moving it from Pioneer Human Services off campus and back into pretrial services. So pre-COVID and back at pretrial services, we're able to service district court a lot more as far as pretrial services and monitored release. We were able to order somebody to monitored release for those, those hand touches from pretrial services, and that certainly helped with failures to appear and failures to comply. With staffing, unfortunately, they weren't able to service district court, but do referrals for public defenders to get appointed to cases. So moving our efforts from Pioneer Human Services onto campus, and, certainly that will help with getting additional bodies into pretrial services so that they can beef that back up again. City pretrial services is on campus. It's been very successful. And so moving our efforts into Aaron's office would certainly be able to help with the sustainability and the success rate of that supported release program. And that's where we're looking to focus the efforts now.
Towards the supported,
And
the monitored release.
Judge,
Go ahead.
if I could just clarify, the monitored release, that would be something that the court is ordering the participants to engage in, is that correct?
So yes, back pre-COVID, we were able to order folks to check in with pretrial services. And it'd be either, depending on what their risk level was, it may be just a phone call once a week, might be in person once a month, but that's where they actually physically had to go and have contact either verbally or in person with pretrial services. Pretrial services would then report back to the court to say whether they did check in or not. They currently are doing that for Superior Court, but no longer for District Court. And so they would send a report to District Court, and also they currently send it to Superior Court with regards to whether they've checked in. And that's helped with the failure to appear, because certainly if they're just checking in and they're getting updated phone numbers or contact information as far as addresses or emails, then they're getting them their reminders, you gotta be in court on Tuesday at 9 a.m. And then certainly that can flow into, how are you going to get there? Do you have a ride? Do you have a license? Do you need a bus pass? Do you need a ride share? What other court services do you have? Do you need to UA? Let's remind you to call in before 11 a.m. every day. And so that's where they could certainly report as far as whether they've had that contact or not.
And Mike, I know we've been talking about the city was having some success with their monitored release. If I'm not mistaken, their judges are also ordering folks to report.
Report to pretrial
Okay,
services.
which is markedly different from what we
Yes.
were experiencing
Yes.
in our monitored release, or excuse me, our supported release
Supported
program.
release.
Yes.
And the main difference is with, currently with Pioneer Human Services being off campus, and it is a voluntary program that as soon as they're released from custody, they don't necessarily want to take a van ride straight over to Pioneer Services. They want to get home to their families, their children, their jobs, their pets. So they're not going to make that their first choices to a stop as soon as they get out of custody. And then there's the non-follow through after that fact. At least here on campus through pretrial services, if they show up to court and I see, hey, they didn't show up to their appointment, I can send them directly from the courtroom to pretrial services office to go check in and get that established, and then have them come back to the courtroom and report back that same day. That's within the same hour.
So it'd be adding one pretrial services officer to help with the district court monitored release. And I spoke with Aaron. Aaron feels that the workload between what he has right now and what he anticipates, based on experience before when we had four additional or six, I can't remember.
It's 6 total, but we retained 2, so essentially 4.
Okay. And so he feels pretty comfortable that one pretrial officer for that function, monitored release, would be sufficient for his office. We also would make a recommendation for a second person, which also be trained as a pretrial officer that could fill in the blanks when needed. But primary focus with doing court date reminders and warrant avoidance. And by that I mean making active phone calls, similar to what Betty Grateful had done through the process of the live line where they could call in, get directions to court. This person would be tasked with that as well, receiving, dockets up front, reminding people of their court appearances. Right then on the telephone, if they've got challenges, they can identify what those challenges are and then help to make sure it doesn't turn into a warrant and do some upfront navigation that would be helpful. Along with, if they miss their court date, re-engaging with them, talking to them, saying, okay, we don't want this to become a warrant. Let's get you in for a warrant recall. Let's get you in for whatever it is, and addressing those right up front. So the ask would be for 2 additional staff members to the pretrial services office. And that would be their functions for that. The third is, promising as it is, We've heard that the peer navigators work really well with helping people navigate through the courts, get into their court dates, being from a place that the individuals have been from. The city has shown good success with the peer navigator folks that they have. We would ask Pioneer Health Services to pivot and give us a peer navigator up front. The service is being offered through the existing contract right now, but not being taken advantage of. So we'd like to redefine that and move that through the service contract that we have with with Pioneer, and move a peer navigator up front. So that's kind of the middle box. The third box is we just haven't done a very good job of keeping the data. There hasn't been tracked data. There wasn't one established for the significant data or data set up for the rideshare program or supported release. We want to make that more robust and have reportable data that comes out. For pretrial services, there's an NIC has a motto. It's called Measuring What Matters. We've already began work on creating a dashboard for with these particular algorithms to establish our own monitoring system. It would be visible, and they're going to work with between Aaron Lind and Diane Lindquist. They would establish to put together that dashboard. And so you can see some of the things that we would be reporting out on in that third box. So it's kind of three prongs. Adjust the current programs that we have, move them forward. Add the additional resources to pretrial services to accommodate what we want to do moving forward. And three is doing a better job of tracking the data and reporting out on it and measuring what matters for the decision makers to make their decisions with. Next slide, please. So I kind of talked about this role right here, and this is, if you can see, they would be trained as a pretrial officer. They would provide live contact with the justice involved to remind them of court dates, offer court services to eliminate barriers, and it would help to preclude them from becoming, or help address things that would preclude them from not making their scheduled court date. They would serve as a liaison between the public defense for text reminders. Currently, we have UpTrust in progress with the public defenders. We would also actually have an element of that would be involved with this to help keep those statistics that Diane has been tracking and moving forward those part. And then monitor failure to peers, who's not making it to court, getting on the phones with them and trying to make connection with them to get them back to court and help with some of that warrant FTA backlog, along with some of those failure to complies. Just some information for you, and this comes out of the National Guide of Improving Court Appearances. It was published in May of 2023. Next slide, Ron, sorry. So live call reminders was found effective right here in our state. King County used it, and then other states have used it, Arizona and Colorado. And it's been in use for over two decades in most jurisdictions. New York also had put together one that had statistically significant effect on the non-appearances rate. But I think down on the bottom, it's that long period of time between arraignment and the time that they actually and arraignment. That period of time is the most critical time, and getting court date reminders to them, maybe get something up closer to their court date, which I'm suggesting, to help make sure that they know that they need to appear in court. If they have a barrier, identify it then, and then get that information, have it percolate up to the courts through pretrial services. The study found that a greater effectiveness for people of color, with an average of non-appearance rate decreasing from 22% to 12%. And that has been shown for the Hispanic population as well as Black participants as well. So it's meeting them where they're at, it's getting that phone call to them, live reminders to it. Text date reminders you'll see below are also one of the things that the National Guide recommends for getting people back for court appearances. There's some statistics on the bottom. You can see pre and post UpTrust. Diane continues to track those numbers and has statistics that are surrounds that as well. Transportation assistance, which we're talking about the ride share program. And one thing I think you should note out of Hennepin, Minnesota, is that The evaluation for a pilot did not collect data showing the impact on failure to appear rates. Obviously, we've shown you that it's very tough to attract those because there's so many efforts that are going along with it, so many different nuances. So they also didn't track that. However, in a survey of public defenders participating in a pilot, 88% said that the program had reduced barriers to approve for appearance, and 78 said that in fact reduced the number of failure to appears. Well, that's what we're hearing today. We're hearing it from the courts, we're hearing it from the public defenders, and so there's a lot of people that say, yes, it's helping, but it's hard to quantify how that help is materializing. Does that make sense? So it's not just us. There's other counties that are also experiencing it as well. And then the second one that I gave an example is called the SEATS program. They provide primarily to the people that have medical requests, medical needs. Am I running too long here? Okay. And then also they serve the areas that's not served by public transportation. So, and then if you look down at the bottom, anecdotal evidence suggested high use of rates for the program. Again, what we're talking about for these programs, it's hard to quantify the exact amount that it's benefited us. Wraparound services, also from the National Guide of Improving Appearance. You can see from some of these highlights, I'm not going to read through them because I'm losing my voice. But you also see that they've shown some significant benefits in having wraparound services at a pretrial services level. And here's some other areas around the country that you can use for examples for that as well. The lastly is a dashboard, like I had indicated before. These are the measurements that we're going to do. An outcome measurement plus a performance measurement is taken directly from the National Institute of Corrections manual on how to track this information out of pretrial services. And those are the elements that we'll be tracking: release rate, appearance rate, public safety rate, success rate. All of these have their own algorithms for them and data that is necessary to report the data out on. And then there's performance, the universal screening recommendation, and so forth. So those are those three elements. If you were to go back to that one slide, I talked about three elements. I just attached all three of those elements. So for the capstone, I'm sorry, one more slide. So one of the things that has been a challenge for us is to provide the information out to the public. And so what we want to do is have both an inward and an outward facing example of it. If you look at the far left, that's our current dashboard right now. And it reports out on jail population, admissions, and jail releases. We want to expand that a bit with some of the things that some of these other areas are doing to include some of the things that you see on their dashboards as well. Still a work in progress, but it's something that we're going to come back with and inform the board on. Okay, I'm losing my voice. Go ahead, Diane. Diane's going to work to the capstone proposal.
So we all know that the capstone proposal is equal to around 540,000, and this is just the breakdown of that with regards to the proposal we mentioned earlier. So the pre-trial officers, we propose to put in 320,000 into it, and I can show you the breakdown of the 320,000 in the next slide, and that would include the salary and materials for the two pre-trial officers for the next 2 years. The peer navigator or the supported release, we will not ask any of that amount from this proposal with capstone because we still actually have 207,000 of it from the phase 4 grant, which will just get rolled over and extended through to the life of the capstone grant. For the rideshare program, we are proposing to ask 200,000, but we just want to let you know that the 200,000 will actually not last 1 full year if we keep the rideshare as is. The rideshare program under the phase 3 set of it, or the latest iteration of it, was spending around 18,000 per month, and if we extend that for the full year, we actually would need 216,000 for the full next year. So unless we change the scope of the program in some way, that 200,000 will not last 3 years. But so far, that's what we are going to be asking for the rideshare Uber program. For the rideshare bus program, for the next 2 years, we're proposing to ask 4,000 because it's the cheaper of the two programs. And for the information dashboard, just for the licenses of the programs required to run and manage and analyze and process the data, that's just 16,000 for the next 2 years as well. Because there's already a rollover amount from the current phase that covers 2024. So if you look at the next slide, that's just going to show you the breakdown of each of those values, like how much the salary would be, how much the laptops would be, and how much those would be for each of those items. And if you guys are agreeable to that proposal, then that would be what we bake into the capstone application. Now, this is not something that is permanent, like already cast in stone. So if you feel like rideshare for 200,000 is too much, then we just need to move, we can move that amount elsewhere.
Just a time frame question. If we apply, do we know when the decision would be made from MacArthur?
No, I know that we submit on the 21st. I don't know how quick the turnaround is gonna be on it.
I was gonna throw out a proposal, I mean, for the ride share, you know, I think it's, I mean, maybe Commissioner French can maybe correct me on this, but I think it's close to 85% of our county's population lives within the PTBA, the Public Transportation Benefit Area. So, I mean, these are folks that live in close proximity to a bus line. STA has pretty robust bus service. I mean, certainly an Uber ride that pulls up in front of your residence is more convenient, but with the cost, I mean, if we're looking at providing transportation, in whatever form that is, you can provide transportation to more people. I think if you push folks that do live on a bus line or within certainly reasonable walking distance of a bus line, push those people more towards using public transportation as opposed to the Uber, and using Ubers for folks that live further out, maybe outside the PTBA, or, you know, in a more rural setting that isn't within walking, or somebody that maybe has a disability that can't, you know, walk to, can't easily walk to a bus stop. Maybe that's something to sort of prioritize to stretch those dollars as far as they can go.
And I was gonna say, and that's something specifically that Aaron and I talked amongst ourselves with moving supported release into pretrial services instead of Pioneer Human Services just getting the calls. Pretrial services could be more apt to look and work with an individual to say, okay, you're on a bus line, so between your home, your work, and we have 2 testing facilities here in Spokane to help manage, because that's the hard thing with the bus system is that you have to figure out, you know, going online to then find your route, to what time is your route, to then your next location. And so we're talking about folks that are very high risk, high needs, and somebody to help them with navigating the bus system is part of the process. And so it may be easy for you and I to go onto our smartphones to bring up an app for the bus line. Some folks don't have even just that technology, but certainly with having someone in pretrial services to help them with that technology, to help build their route with them, then they can certainly use a bus pass, then potentially an Uber ride. And so, yes, that is definitely something that we've been talking about.
We talked about more discerning eye, look into this, yeah.
Yes.
Well, wouldn't they have to have a smartphone to call that Uber?
So they call into Pioneer Services, so it can be just a flip phone.
They order it for them.
So, yes,
Pioneer orders the Uber for them, they
Correct.
don't
Yeah.
call it themselves.
No, because they have to verify a case number and which court they're with and what service they're going to.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what, I mean, that you basically said what I was gonna suggest is that we keep the amount of money in here, but if there's this initial assessment that you're doing around, you know, does this person live on the other side of town from where they have to get the UA, they might need a ride share. If they have to get to work by a certain time or pick up their kids from childcare, there may be times when a bus is not always gonna be timely, so, but that's something that I think that if this works, you could restructure that and have that conversation up front, like you're saying. Okay, let's talk about what the court ordered, let's talk about what you're gonna have to do. Okay, let's talk about your transportation, how you're gonna get there, and then just, you know, and then I think it would be more judicious, the use of the ride share when it's needed. I mean, that would be the ideal situation, I think.
So Judge Smith took it upon himself for a full week to do
I saw his
UA
letter.
testing. Did you see his letter? Yes. And can show the perils of, having to get back and forth to work and do your analysis testing when you're not driving and or have someone to give you a ride. And so that's where it did take a considerable amount of time to plan out his route. But if we're talking about individuals that don't necessarily have that capacity to plan out their routes too, we have to think about it in that fashion too, as well.
And then at the individual level, they may be going to treatment across town when there's one closer to them. I mean, you need someone that can work with them to help them get through the processes. That's what it requires, so. That's how we utilize it. That's what we're proposing, the way that we utilize it, if we move forward with it.
That way.
So, and like I said, this has been run by our core group, which is a core group to MacArthur's, their input. Obviously, the city is running one that's very similar to this, and they're having great success with it as well, and their input too as well, so. Any more questions on this one?
Well, how likely do you think we're gonna get the capstone? And if we don't, what are our plans to restructure or ask MacArthur to restructure some of the funds that we're currently trying to spend, but maybe not getting the outcomes we're looking for with the supervised release and.
That's why I'm here today, is to get some direction from the board. One, if we're gonna apply for the capstone and how it would be laid out. Two, if we're not gonna pursue the capstone, which I don't know if that's gonna be a decision. Three is, if we don't get the capstone, what are we looking at in reallocation of the money, if that's even an option for MacArthur. So they have to get approval from MacArthur on all of this. So I still feel there's value in what I'm recommending as far as our overall justice system and, the 2 additional pretrial services officers in pretrial. So it's likely I would come back and at least make a re-pitch for that area of it, but and then let the contract for supported release run out the way that it is right now. It's the Uber rides that are a real concern. I mean, there has to be, like I said, there's almost 50% is for the city of Spokane. And so is there a match both ways from the city and for our county? What do we look at without being, self-serving? Is there somewhere in between there we can do that? And so those are questions we'd have to ask ourselves and have more meetings over to try to figure out if the rideshare program, barring the capstone, doesn't go through, and so.
So, Mike, when JMI was here, you and I met with them and they talked about the rideshare program being very expensive and what other communities were continuing to do it. I don't have a problem with us going forward with this proposal. I mean, they're gonna tell us yes or no. And it's on them, but I think as we look to, I wasn't a commissioner when we first got the MacArthur stuff, but we knew that when we got to towards the end of that, we've got to start to figure out how does this get funded differently. And so the Uber program is one of those that, we would have to really look at. If they fund 200,000, we need to look at what that sustainability of that really would be, because I don't think we can sustain that as well as 2 additional employees at pretrial services. So for me, those are the things that I'm happy to ask and see if we get it, but then we've got to be realistic on the backside of it. And then the other thing I know on the Uber program too was that I know someone with Department of Corrections probation, and they were using it as well. Yeah. And then we kind of cut them off, which, I would agree that should have just been for the county and the city to be using that, because the MacArthur Foundation is for both, correct?
And I haven't I'm actually meeting with Maggie next week for coffee, but I haven't had a chance to see what when she set it up, what the parameters were. I think it was just too broad a net. And I think it needs more discernment on who's getting these rides, how it's being managed, and, you
Because
know,
that's part of how we sustain the program. I mean, we
Correct,
can't
yeah,
sustain
yeah.
paying for the state.
yeah, so I'm
That's
interested
a
to
state
hear.
issue that they need to be providing those fundings for. So anyway, so I just bring those up and then, like I said, I'm
Next slide,
happy to move
Rob.
forward
That-
with at least requesting.
There's my Mary bullet right at the top. How does the board embrace sustainability cost? And that's what you're talking about, you know, because essentially, if you look at this right now, if we were to sustain it the way it is, we didn't do rideshare, we didn't do support and release, it would be the cost of 2 pretrial services officers for this department. And then you would have to add back those other services to it for the sustainability part of it. So I appreciate what you're saying, and we're on top of that part of it too as well. We just need to be upfront about it. That's what's gonna be left over after the capstone are those expenses, you know, so. So your steps forward, I would need the board to give me some direction on which way I'm gonna go, and I'll be happy to follow through it and answer any other questions that we have.
I have a comment or a question or comment. So the ride share, Mike, for both Uber and bus, is that district court specific, or is that still district court and city municipal courts? What's
So
the umbrella?
It would include municipal, district, and Superior Court.
Okay.
Unless I was advised to focus on the county portion of it as part of the capstone, you know?
Okay.
And that is, right now it includes all of them.
And then my comment is, as you and I have talked a lot, is making sure that we have clearly defined, measurable outcomes. What does success look like? Because the future of any of these things, we need to know what we're measuring. We need to know what's the problem we're trying to solve. How do we measure it? And how do we make sure that we can identify outcomes at the end of it to then determine if $540,000 is an investment over 2 years, are we reducing costs elsewhere in the system by equal to or greater? Because that'll help inform the board on future decisions on it.
Absolutely.
And I know you and I have talked about that just to make sure we've got really good structure around it.
And then my intent is, if we move forward, is to have at least quarterly updates for us to review the data in the dashboard, give you an opportunity to ask for other measurements, because we could stop, pivot, and include those. But it's important to get it in front of you so you can help make decisions moving forward.
So the supported release is specific to just district court, correct?
The pilot currently,
The
yes.
pilot, yeah.
Yes.
The
Because
right,
Superior Court is already using pretrial services. District Court lost pretrial services. Superior Court still has pretrial services, so that's why we had the pilot with just
yeah,
district.
but the pilot that we embarked on was specific to just district court. The ride share is all of the courts. We saw how, you know, we saw the percentage or the reductions for district court. Have they been similar, better, worse in Superior or municipal? Do we, because I mean, those weren't a part of the, at least all your bullets were specific to district court.
We didn't explore those because I was asked to do district court, but we'd be happy to explore the rest of them and kind of bring that back.
Well, but the capstone dollars would still be all 3 courts, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So do we know as a whole,
With the
was it
overall
a success or was it a slight success in district and a massive failure in Superior and district? I mean, how do we know what we're doing? We're looking at 1/3 of the data when it comes to that specific program.
So we have some challenges getting data. What we can do is ask for what we want, and then they would produce it in their systems and then send it back to us.
Okay.
So that's one of the challenges that we have. We're happy to ask them for whatever it is. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But, particularly with the city, asking the city, they will offer us reports back, but we don't have their raw data to use and to interpret. It was one of the things that we're gonna request. Superior Court, we certainly could do that part, because you have access to SCOMIS, right? Yeah, SCOMIS, so we'll look at that as well, as an
Okay.
overall. So if you wanna hold off on that and just get that piece of the element, or
I mean, we're looking at 1/3 of the courts. I mean, but and honestly, the numbers weren't, I mean, wasn't a home run by any chance. I mean, it was an improvement in FTAs, but I mean, it wasn't groundbreaking. I mean, this wasn't massive, but I mean, we have no idea. I mean, unless you can tell me, I mean, anecdotally, I mean, word of mouth, was it a success in municipal or Superior? I mean, do we know, or do any of you feel comfortable in a open public meeting on the record saying it was a success in municipal and Superior? I mean, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you guys, because we only have data from one of the three courts. Are we comfortable that, yes, let's spend another, $540,000? I mean, it's not Spokane County dollars. I mean, these are coming from a private organization, but, spending on, when we're really looking at 1/3 the information to make the decision.
Are you referring to the supporting release or the ride share?
Ride share,
Because ride share is all data, isn't it, all courts?
yes.
Okay.
But we don't have all the courts' data.
On the
In
supporting
terms of
release.
outcomes.
Outcomes, yes.
Okay.
In terms of failure to, I think the challenge is I don't know what success, and I'm coming into this late, but to your point, Scott, what does success look like? You could look at some of these numbers and go, oh, it's rideshare successful, or you could say, well, I think there should have been greater success, but I don't know what that number was, so it's hard, even if we get the municipal data and the Superior Court data around their failure to appear rates going up or down, what is considered a success? I mean, I think anything going down is considered success, but that's, to your point, probably moving forward, we need to set an actual goal and say, this is where we wanna aim towards, and then we can say whether or not some of these programs are successful or not. But I think probably what I'm hearing from the judge is that not having someone in pretrial that people are directed to then navigate their needs and their rides and all those things. This is one tool, the ride share, but without this other tool of pretrial supports and reminders, then it's not as successful. But anyway, that's just me, and that's just an hypothesis.
And one thing I can say, it's not completely designed just to failure to appears. So after COVID, failure to appears dropped because we have the ability to have participants, appear by Zoom for court appearances, for example. What we're looking at is failure to complies. And you can't measure a failure to comply with a warrant. A judge may not issue a warrant for every failure to comply, but the fact is the person is not being successful if they're not showing up to their treatment or showing up to their urinalysis testing. Those are the failure to complies that rideshare and or the Uber program is being successful with and is helping not only municipal court, district court, and Superior Court. It's getting those testing and those treatment. It's getting that person success in their lives. And that's where and as Commissioner pointed out, how do you measure that? How do you measure the success in their lives when they're going to treatment?
No,
And to testing.
And I completely agree with you. And how can you measure that absent the Uber ride that they wouldn't have gone to those? And you can't.
Yeah, and so for district, municipal, and Superior Court, it's a 66% that's used, percentage of the funds that's being used for Uber rides. That 66% are individuals that are making it to their testing, making it to their treatment, making it to their probation officer appointments. Those are the folks that are making it, and that's where the success is on all three levels.
So to me, though, they're making it, but then once they're done, are they recidivate?
Yeah. Well, and that's the
Are they
thing, as
coming
far
back
as
into
if
the
we get
system?
them to
Because if
make,
they're not coming back into the system, then I do see
That's-
that's the
that's the
success.
success right there,
Yes.
is that
But
they're
but I
going
think
and
that's
sober.
the data we need to know, as we look at this, that those people that have gotten that, are they getting back into the system or not?
And even recidivism has two ways to measure it, at least two ways. One is it a new charge? And they resolve, on their own, or two, is it a new trip to the jail?
Right,
So we have to
to me, that's what we
define.
do need to measure, because that truly is the success of it versus, kind of like the Head Start to Construction program, it's a success that they're not coming back into our system. And so that's worth the extra cost to not have them come back. So that, to me, that's really the data that we've got to figure out.
Is there a national standard of what's an allowable amount of failure to complies, or there isn't? It's elusive, so it's hard to find out what success is based on a number. We reduced our FTAs by 10%. I don't know if that's you see what I'm saying? We reduced our FTCs by 10%. I mean, those are numbers we can track, but is that the success that we're looking for?
Do we track our graduates from the therapeutic treatment courts?
Right.
How many folks have entered into the program? How many folks have been successful with the program and graduated from the program?
And not
But
Not
yeah,
because
to
they
Commissioner
successfully.
CUNY's point, over the next 12 months, I mean, are they back in a courtroom? Because then I would say then, no, that really wasn't a success, because they're back in the system, they're justice
Is that
involved
one
again.
individual or is that three individuals?
No, for that one person, you probably wouldn't count them as a success if they're back in to the justice
But compared to
system.
the 700 other folks that it has been successful.
For
that's
those
where
700 people, it
Yes.
was a success, yeah.
And so that's where, as Director pointed out, I mean, statisticians can run the numbers and skew the data any way which you like as far as what
Not
is
her.
it, not you, definitely not you. How do you measure that, the one person that does recidivate out of the hundreds that have made it through therapeutic court, that is a success. So we're looking at just the one individual versus
Just
the mass.
as a follow-up to when you're applying for the capstone then, could we build into that an ongoing, if we got the capstone, what we would do is set some of these indicators of success. Cause I don't think we're gonna have those figured out by March 21st, but maybe that could be a part of the capstone, is that we know that there's certain indicators that we've been tracking, but we wanna be open to other ones. And so that will be determined as part of the capstone work, so that we can actually say if adding pretrial officer and changing how rideshare is determined, who gets to, I think over time, you'll see the rideshare costs go down if it's more managed through pretrial. That's just, again, a theory, but that could be something that we could track as well. But anyway, I was just wondering is that allowed, if we can put that into the capstone?
Benchmarks, yeah, we can set the dashboards up.
They don't expect us to have all of those set right now when we apply.
Well, I think we need to identify that those are the kind of measurements we're gonna be taking, so, I just from today, I've already picked up 3 that I would probably add in there, but each got.
Sorry.
I just wanted to add, I agree with Commissioner Cooney, I don't have a problem with going forward. We're talking about applying for a grant, right, which is asking for other people's money to continue a program or to change a program. I understand where Commissioner Kearns' question's coming from. We do want more data, we wanna see the whole picture, particularly when we have that decision, right, in 2026 about do we now hand off, we'll ultimately get to decide. I don't think we're legally required to accept the or to continue programs to accept the capstone, but correct me if I'm wrong, if it's some kind of contract like that. I think that's, my understanding is they're looking for a commitment, right? As a basis to, like a criteria to award the grant, so it's important that we're talking about these things, but I say so thanks to the team for your work on putting the proposal together. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think we can look at the parameters around rideshare. There may be some better ways to do it that's more cost effective. And I think when we ultimately make the decisions about to continue or not, once the capstone runs out, if hopefully we get it, we can have a full conversation as well about which investments are worth it. And because every FTA you prevent saves the system money as well. So I say let's apply for the grant.
I would say too, having an agreed upon benchmarks that we wanna
Yes,
measure
I agree.
would go a long ways for me. Because success looks one way to you and one way to you. It'd be nice if we set up these, criteria in advance for it.
But we can do that before we accept, because we don't even know we're gonna get offered the grant. So we have time to figure those out as we look to accept the grant.
as we roll it over, yeah. And we could build this, like I said, if you have a set amount, like what success means to you and a way to measure it, then we can start attacking those. And Diane can start building those models.
Yeah, I'm just gonna reinforce everything that's been said. Having defined measurements of what success looks like, whether it's pre-application, part of the application or before we expend any funds. At the end of the day, the commissioners are gonna be asked to evaluate once the pilot runs out, is this demonstrating improvements in system participation and avoiding costs, whatever the measurements are, to know whether to continue the funds. And I think it's really important that we have the data and the commitment in there back to MacArthur so that we know what we're measuring. My understanding is we haven't had that in the past of the clarity on measurements and whatnot. I know you guys have really tried to define some in there, but it's defining it after the fact. Defining it on the front end, you create your baseline data, and then you look at it during the pilot program to determine what was moving in the dashboards.
Yeah, I wouldn't make any recommendations that doesn't have us tracking the data and the outcomes.
Well, I was just reminded, if I may, Madam Chair, Aaron, when you gave a presentation to us about the pretrial program with Superior Court, you had a lot of good data points in there about the success of working with folks to appear and even not to reoffend, if I remember.
Right.
So I was just gonna suggest, like, you already have some of those data points already for the Superior Court program. So I would look to that to see if we could use some of those similar data points. The thing is, you want your benchmark though, like where are we right now in district court so that you know what you're measuring against, right?
And I also think it's really important that any of the programs that we have here, the commitment has to be by each of the participating jurisdictions that they're going to provide the same data. Otherwise, why would the commissioners support a request for a proposal if there's not a commitment to measure it?
Is that something you can talk to the city about in your meeting next week, I assume?
To Maggie? Yeah, I think that I'm just gonna lay the landscape out and get her, a good conversation back and forth. I don't know what her directions have been as far as the
You
committee.
can ask the question, I
I
assume.
can ask the question, the question's gotta be, if the rideshare program goes forward, how's the city gonna invest in this? It's tough to kind of go forward when 40% of, or almost 50% is city rights. So that conversation has to happen.
But I bet up front, if they knew they were having to collect certain data points, they would do that. I think part of the issue is that there wasn't, as I am understanding with rideshare, there were no,
There was nothing set up for it.
performance metrics. So we
That's
just
what
need
made
to,
it really challenging.
I would assume the city would agree to track those because they have been using the bus passes and using the rideshare.
Okay, so we're way over time, but Commissioner French, I see you've unmuted. Did you have something?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to weigh in here. Appreciate the opportunity to do that. I really appreciate where Commissioner Kearns is going and what he's trying to drive to, and I share the same concerns. But the other part of it is, has this been to the Law and Justice Council, and are they supportive of this? Is one question, and then I'll answer that one, and then I'll get to the second one.
So it's been before the core group, which is the group that's centric to the MacArthur Foundation. It has not gone out to the Regional Law and Justice Council yet.
Okay, and then and this is more aspirational than anything else, and it probably doesn't really fit to where we're at here. But I mean, it's a long-term goal from my standpoint. It would be nice if we had a structure, if you will, where we could go to the courts and say, we got $500,000 to spend. Where's and how's the best way to spend it to improve the criminal justice system? and then have you as experts tell us or advise us as to, how do we get the best bang for our buck? Because Lord knows we have been through a whole series of programs and have tested and played with a variety of different things. While we're making incremental increases, I don't think any of us are at a point where we're saying, you bet, we're right where we want to be. I don't think we're anywhere close to there. So, and clearly don't expect that in this situation. I understand we've got an opportunity to partner with MacArthur again and stuff. And so, but just at some point, it would be nice to be able to have that kind of input from the courts. Thank you.
As presiding with District Court, Commissioner French, I can specifically tell you at this point in time, rideshare is the number one talk of our judges' meetings, especially when rideshare was discontinued this last month. And, as far as talking amongst ourselves as to what we can do to try and convince the county to apply for the capstone and therefore also help make it a sustainable program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So do you need anything?
So I need direction on whether to continue on with the capstone, or what is the direction from the board?
I think there's head nods to continue to move forward with, seeking it from MacArthur. Commissioner French? Is that a hand up for having it move forward?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Number thumbs up.
So I think you have enough.
Have enough? Okay. All right, Emma, any other questions? Don't hesitate to shoot me an email, specificity, and Commissioner Kearns, I'll get on that and see what I can come back. And we'll circle back with the SRLJC. A lot of who's on the SRLJC are in the core group. Yeah, and so, conversation is happening, but I will be happy to circle back with them as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I know I
Thank you.
appreciate all your
Thank you
time
so
and efforts, all of you. So thank you very much for being here today to talk through all that.
Thank you for having us.
Okay.
Going well.
Okay, so that's gonna take us to miscellaneous. Scott?
I don't think I have anything.
I see more people coming in, so,
That's for an exec session.
okay. Okay. Is there any miscellaneous items to come before us? Okay, then, take it away, I guess.
We've got one exec session pursuant to pending potential litigation under RCW 423110-1I. This will involve the board, Scott Simmons, myself, Casey Evans, Dale Anderson, and Doug Chase.
Okay, and how long do we anticipate?
15 minutes and no action.
15 minutes, no action. Okay, and again, you said the RCW and I think.
Pending potential litigation.
Okay, so we are gonna go into executive session for the reason just stated. For 15 minutes, no action will be taken. At the end of that executive session, we will adjourn for the day and we'll see everybody back tomorrow.